This guy has been such a gloomy person since high school. He comes from a single-parent family. So he didn't go to college and only has a high school diploma. Isn't that kind of problematic nowadays? He says he works in the food industry. But it's just a ramen shop. Who's he trying to impress? A classmate who always looks down on me at these mixers where I was invited as a draw. I sighed inwardly, thinking, here we go again. But when one of the employees recognized me and revealed my true identity, the beautiful models at the mixer flocked to me. I'm Mike. After graduating high school, I started working in an old-fashioned ramen shop nearby and have been working there ever since. At the time, my mom encouraged me to go to college. But I brushed it off, saying, I have something I want to do. Coming from a single-parent family, I knew we didn't have the financial means for college. The ramen shop was a part-time job I stumbled upon, but the owner and employees were great, making it a fun place to work. Of course, I was proud of the ramen shop, but when asked about my job, I would simply say I worked in the food industry. Because I've been there for a long time and hold various positions, it's easier to summarize it that way. Most people are satisfied with that answer, but one guy would always mock me. That guy was James, a classmate from high school. I wasn't particularly close with James. In fact, we barely interacted. James dyed his hair bright colors, wore his uniform sloppily, and often got reprimanded by teachers. He was outgoing, but it felt more like he was overly familiar. Even though he had a girlfriend, he openly talked about hanging out with other girls and hitting on other people's partners. He was notorious for his womanizing, often making girls from other schools wait for him or walking around town with different girls every time. We were in the same class once, but I can count on one hand the number of conversations we had. I didn't even have his contact info, but one day, I ran into James at a trendy bar. Hey, are you Mike? At first, I was startled by the unknown guy suddenly talking to me. The guy who spoke to me was decked out in designer brands and had a well-tanned, fit body. I was confused, not recognizing him at first. What, you don't remember? It's me, James. James grinned at me. It was then that I finally remembered this overly familiar classmate. You're Mike, right? Wow, you haven't changed at all, hilarious. He kept slapping my shoulder as if he found something amusing. James went to a top university after high school and now works at a major advertising agency. He proudly shared that he was at the bar for a mixer with cute girls. Apparently, he's still living a flashy lifestyle. Mike, what are you doing here? I'm here for work. Really? So, what are you doing now? I work in the food industry. I answered as usual. Then, James burst out laughing. You're still working at that ramen shop? I was a bit annoyed by his sudden laughter, but arguing with him seemed pointless. James had always belittled me. I replied, yeah, that's right. Then James laughed even harder and said, seriously? Didn't you skip college? Still just working at the ramen shop? That's hilarious, man. An adult working at a ramen shop. That's too funny. No, it's not just the ramen shop. I was getting annoyed by his excessive laughter and tried to correct him. But he cut me off with, it's fine, it's fine. Don't bother saying you work in the food industry just to show off. Man, I haven't laughed this hard in a while. As James wiped tears from the corners of his eyes, I no longer had the energy to correct him. Just as I was thinking of leaving, James suddenly pulled out his phone from his pocket. Give me your contact info. I have tons of money now, so I'll treat you to some great food sometime. His mocking tone made me a bit annoyed. Not really. I can invite lots of cute girls too, come on. The screen on his phone showed pictures of him dining at a restaurant. He was posing with unknown women in front of delicious-looking dishes. Like this girl, or this one. Isn't it great to eat good food with cute girls? The dishes in the photos looked delicious. Honestly, I wasn't interested in meeting women, but the restaurants he frequented were well-known and places I had wanted to try, so I was tempted. James seemed to know many good places, even ones I hadn't heard of. As someone working in the food industry, visiting different types of restaurants is educational. So let's go eat sometime. It was clear that James intended to use me as a backup at these mixers. If he wanted to use me, I might as well take advantage of him too. I said, if our schedules match, and exchanged contact information with him. After that, I often got invited to mixers. James seemed to be quite the socialite, hosting mixers almost every week. Not only were the girls different each time, but the venue was rarely the same. I was impressed by his research skills, though it was all for the sake of mixers. And tonight, James was hosting another mixer. Given how many times he had emphasized, "I've gathered beautiful models, you have to come," it was clear he really wanted to get close to them. Mocking me to highlight his own success and wealth was James's usual tactic. Of course, it annoyed me, but it wasn't worth engaging with him seriously. I wasn't interested in models, but since tonight's venue was a place I wanted to check out, I reluctantly agreed to go. Tonight's mixer was at a stylish restaurant known for its fusion French cuisine. We were supposed to meet at the entrance. The first thing James said was, "I'm aiming for Mia tonight. I'm betting everything on tonight. I'm seriously going to win Mia over, so don't get in my way." He glared at me sharply, but I had no idea who Mia was. That's why I splurged on this high-end restaurant. "Mike, I invited you, so read the room." Even if I told him I was only interested in the restaurant and the food, he wouldn't believe me. I nodded non-committally, and James got all excited by himself. "Mia has 1 million followers as an influencer, and she's super cute. Plus, she's got a great body. I've got to get her." I was too speechless to respond to James, who was drooling over her. As the start time approached, I managed to cut the conversation short, and we headed inside the restaurant. In the private room we were shown to, 3 women were already waiting. As models, they were indeed all very beautiful. "Sorry to keep you waiting," James laughed. "Nice to meet you." The most beautiful woman smiled and greeted us. I found out her name was Mia during the introductions, and it was clear why James was so eager to win her over. With James's practice lead, we toasted and the mixer began. After the introductions, James launched into his usual bragging. As usual, I took pictures of the food and made notes about it. This guy just keeps taking pictures of the food, he's such a nerd. "Sorry about that," James said, feigning an apology, and then started his usual routine of putting me down. Ignoring him, I continued to taste the dishes and jot down my impressions. When addressed, I would answer, but for the most part, time passed with James talking to the women. "So, isn't this place super popular? How did you get a reservation?" When Mia said that, James eagerly leaned forward. "Actually, I know the owner here. Keep it a secret." James lowered his voice dramatically. "Wow, that's amazing." The women responded with exaggerated admiration. Feeling pleased with himself, James continued to talk about knowing the owner. For someone who claimed it was a secret, he sure was blabbing a lot. As I was internally sighing, I suddenly heard, "Hey, Mike," and looked up. Somehow, Mia had moved and was now sitting right in front of me. "Have we met somewhere before?" "Ha!" The way she said it felt like a pickup line, making my heart skip a beat. Even though I knew it wasn't, it was still nerve-wracking to hear from such a beautiful woman. "You look familiar, Mike." I don't think so. If I had met someone as beautiful as her, I wouldn't have forgotten." Just as I was about to say it must be a mistake, James interrupted with a loud, "No way. He's not distinctive at all, so you probably just see faces like his everywhere." James laughed uproariously. "And someone as plain as him would never cross paths with someone like you, Mia." While his words were technically true, they were so blatantly condescending that even the women seemed a bit taken aback. Trying to boost his own status, he was lowering it instead. And he didn't even realize it, which was pathetic. Then James started another round of his boring bragging. "Recently, I worked with a celebrity." James continued to boast proudly. They are excitedly talking about actors and comedians we often hear on TV, saying I'll introduce you to them sometime. Since it didn't concern me, I focused on taking photos of the new dishes and jotting down my thoughts. Then Mia spoke to me again. "Mike, are you on social media?" "No, not really." I tilted my head at the seemingly random question, so she added, "I noticed you were taking lots of pictures." She said she wondered if I was going to upload them online, and it finally made sense to me. "Oh, no. I work in the food industry. As soon as I said that, I saw James smirk. Don't try to show off. It's just a ramen shop. The women, who had been enjoying themselves, suddenly looked at me in surprise. Their faces seemed to say, I can't believe it. This guy has been such a gloomy person since high school. He didn't go to college because he's from a single-parent family and only has a high school diploma. Isn't that problematic these days? And he's been working at a ramen shop since he started as a part-timer. Even now, at almost 30, he's still working there. It's so lame for an adult to be working at a ramen shop. No wonder he tries to make it sound better by saying food industry. I wanted to say it wasn't about showing off, but James kept going. I'm actually the type who only treats girls, but since Mike is poor, I make an exception for him. Not to brag, but I'm pretty rich. Treating someone like him is nothing to me. After all, as an elite, I have to show some charity to the poor. Isn't it super nice of me to treat him? The women responded with forced smiles. They were clearly put off, but James, perhaps because he was drunk, didn't notice. He was happily drinking while putting me down. In his mind, he probably thought he was boosting his own reputation. Just as I was about to sigh, Mia spoke up. Maybe I should upload this to social media too, she said brightly, trying to change the awkward atmosphere. She took out her phone and snapped a photo of the untouched food. As if on cue, the other women began taking pictures of their meals as well. Mia took a few shots before elegantly bringing a bite of food to her mouth. Delicious. She smiled after the first bite. But it could be a bit more colorful. I couldn't help but react to her casual comment. What do you mean? Despite my eager question, Mia gave me a kind smile. These days, dishes that look good in photos are more popular. Of course, the taste is important, but vibrant colors really catch the eye. So, a bit of green here would be perfect. She pointed to a part of the plate. I see. The appearance really does matter. I thought I had been mindful of that, but I hadn't considered the idea of making it photogenic. And changing up the garnish or the sauce color can really make a difference. I see, the garnish. You might also want to think about the plates you use. Mia continued giving me detailed advice I wouldn't have thought of on my own. As I was jotting down notes, James slammed his glass on the table, clearly displeased with me talking to Mia. Mike, read the room. You're just a ramen shop worker, acting like you know about cuisine? Colorfulness doesn't matter for ramen. The tension in the room spiked at James's irritated tone. Mike, you're ruining the meal. Just leave already. What? I'd never been openly criticized for taking photos and notes before. James glared at me, clicking his tongue in annoyance. Just go. Can't you see you're killing the vibe? I swallowed my retort that James was the one ruining the mood. I replied, but we're still in the middle of the course. I wanted to hear more of Mia's advice, but James seemed determined to kick me out. Shut up, you poor loser. This place isn't meant for people like you. Just get out. You're ruining the food. He waved his hand dismissively, and the atmosphere turned cold. Staying any longer would only make things worse. Though I was getting good advice, I had no choice but to leave. I decided to come back alone another time, picked up my stuff, and stood up. Ha! Go home and make some ramen, you poor loser. James laughed as I headed for the door, just as the next course was being served. The waiter holding the tray looked at me. Mr. Thompson, are you leaving? He addressed me. Before I could answer, James's foolish voice echoed in the quiet room. Mr. Thompson? What? Mr. Thompson? Did I hear that right? Am I drunk? James laughed. You must be mistaken, buddy. This guy's just a ramen shop worker. The waiter looked puzzled. Excuse me, but aren't you Mr. Thompson of Thompson International? Yes, that's right. I nodded. What? James shouted. The owner would like to greet you before you leave. Could you wait a moment? The waiter asked politely, and I nodded again. The reason I became known as Mr. Thompson was due to a particular encounter. After working at the ramen shop for a few years, a foreigner came in one day. His name was William, and he was so impressed with our ramen that he kept saying how delicious it was. He then suggested that if we took this flavor to the United States, it would definitely be a hit, and asked if we would join him. The owner, who was over 60, declined, saying it was impossible. But William was determined and started coming to our shop every day. Despite their ongoing standoff, William's enthusiasm never waned. Over time, I started talking to him in simple English. Looking back, my English was embarrassingly poor. Even so, William never laughed at me. He would speak in broken Japanese and use gestures to engage in serious conversations with me. Talking with William made me dream bigger, and for the first time, I found something I truly wanted to do. Until then, I had no ambitions, and had resigned myself to a mundane life. Wanting to change that, I begged the owner to let me take the ramen to America. At first, he told me not to, but after many requests, he finally agreed. That marked the beginning of my busy days. I trained to perfectly recreate the ramen flavor and spent my spare time studying English. I lived frugally to save money for the business and made several trips to America for research. It took several years from the time I decided to do it, but I finally managed to open our first store in America. Despite various troubles, through trial and error, we steadily grew our sales and became a popular spot, always full. Thanks to that, we were featured in famous magazines and online and even got covered by Japanese media. Isn't Thompson International the company that runs that hugely popular ramen shop in America? Mia asked, as if she had just remembered. Yes, that's right. You're well informed. I've been to the Hawaii location. I remember being surprised that the owner was Japanese because I saw a photo there. That's why you looked familiar. Mia smiled warmly. That must have been from a forced photo shoot during a visit. I'm not fond of pictures, but I couldn't refuse their insistence. I never expected it to be displayed at the store, and the thought made me blush. So, is this restaurant today also yours, Mike? Yes, sort of. After succeeding with the ramen shops in America, I returned to Japan. I then expanded into bars and restaurants. The place we're at today is a creative restaurant targeting high-end clientele. I came to check the food, ambience, and service quality. However, my review was cut short by James's outburst. While I was pondering this, the owner, Kane, approached us. A tall, handsome man with shining platinum blonde hair. Kane was a talented individual introduced to me by William, who helped with the ramen shop. He manages most of the high-end restaurants I planned. Since his Japanese isn't perfect, we always converse in English. From behind, I heard women exclaiming, "Wow, they're speaking English." Amazing. After a brief update and casual greeting, Kane asked, "Are you leaving already?" With James kicking me out and Kane being busy, I thought it was best not to stay longer. When I confirmed my intention to leave, voices of surprise rose from behind. "What? Mike, let's talk more." "Yeah, I barely got to talk to you." Suddenly, two women grabbed my arms and pulled me back to my seat. They had seemed uninterested in me until they realized I knew Kane. Amused by their sudden change of attitude, I decided to be upfront with them to avoid giving false hope. "I'm sorry, but Kane is already married, so I can't introduce you to him." I intended to say, but the two women cheerfully replied that they already knew that. Apparently, they had quickly noticed the ring shining on Kane's ring finger. "We want to talk to you, Mike." "What? Me?" Suddenly, I found myself bombarded with questions from the two women. Since I wasn't attending the party to find a girlfriend, I was overwhelmed by their enthusiasm. In the midst of their questioning, James tried to talk to the women, but they brushed him off. "Oh, really? Interesting." Eventually, James gave up trying to talk. While deflecting their barrage of questions, I continued jotting down notes on the dishes being served. When the main course arrived, Mia, who had mostly been observing, suddenly spoke up. "Can I take a picture?" Her bright smile made my heart race, as I wasn't used to such attention from a beautiful woman. Mia had mentioned she was an influencer, so she probably posted food pictures online. Having Mia promote our restaurant could be beneficial. Sure. I'm not very good at it though. Please hand me your phone." I held out my hand, and Mia looked momentarily surprised before letting out a small laugh. "I meant a picture with you, not just the food." Ha! I realized my mistake and felt embarrassed at the unexpected request for a selfie. Is that okay? Though I disliked being photographed, I couldn't refuse Mia's request. When I agreed, Mia moved to sit next to me. I assumed she would ask someone else to take the picture, but instead, she prepared the front camera on her phone. To capture both the food and us in the shot, she had to sit very close. She pressed the shutter, and the small screen displayed Mia's beautiful smile and my tense, awkward grin. Despite my discomfort with photos, I couldn't refuse when Mia asked, "Can I post this on social media?" "Hey, Mia, take a picture with me too." James pushed in from the side, trying to get in the shot. I remembered he had initially expressed interest in Mia. I started to move aside, but Mia stopped me by addressing James. "Sorry, but I don't like people who belittle others and constantly boast. So I'll pass on taking a photo with you, James." What? Even James, with his usual brashness, couldn't push forward after being outright rejected. He slumped his shoulders and glared at me with a mixture of resentment and frustration. "How did you become the president, Mike?" James seemed more sulky than angry at me. We both had used others for our own benefit, but his failure was his own doing. "It's thanks to you, James." He furrowed his brow in confusion. "I had always resigned myself to a mundane life, but being mocked by you pushed me to prove myself. Even when things were tough in America, I worked hard to show everyone what I could do. In a way, I owe it to you." "Shut up," James muttered sulkily. "You've always been smart and capable. You don't need to push others down, and you can aim higher on your own." Hearing that from a winner like you just sounds like mockery. Damn it. "Just watch, I'll make it big too." James took a swig of his drink in frustration. The awkward tension from earlier had dissipated, and for the first time, the dinner felt enjoyable. Since that day, Mia and I kept in touch frequently. Her advice was precise and extremely helpful. Before long, Mia and I were not just exchanging messages but also dining together more frequently. James, unable to give up on Mia, would occasionally reach out to her but often complained about not receiving a reply. When I casually asked Mia about it, she responded with a dazzling smile. His intentions were too obvious, and it scared me, so I blocked him. Her beautiful smile was almost terrifying, and I could only manage a dry laugh. As a model, Mia was naturally attuned to trends and had excellent taste. Using her advice, I improved the dishes at my restaurants, which quickly became popular among young people. Mia, being an influencer, would post photos of the restaurants she liked, and whenever she shared about my restaurants, they became so popular that reservations were hard to get. Though our relationship began through work, Mia and I had become partners in our personal lives as well. We supported and sometimes scolded each other, building a strong relationship. I used to think someone like me can't achieve much. Being mocked hurt, but deep down, I might have believed that I deserved to be looked down upon. However, wanting to prove those who belittled me wrong is what brought me to where I am now. I learned that instead of dwelling on my frustrations, it's essential to turn every situation into an opportunity. I can never express enough gratitude for meeting such wonderful people. I want to continue living my life with gratitude and always look forward. I'm sorry. What? On the flight, I couldn't help myself when I saw a flight attendant walking around showing her underwear, so I stood up and approached her. "Sir." "Oh no, is this a pervert? Here, of all places?" The flight attendant screamed, and the surrounding passengers went into a frenzy. All because I got too close to her. "How long do you plan to keep touching me?" She glared at me with tears in her eyes. But right after that, "I'd like to see you later." A message she sent to me. That was the unexpected beginning of our evening together. Ladies and gentlemen, the aircraft is now cruising. The seatbelt sign turns off with the in-flight announcement. The tension that was in the air since takeoff finally eases a little. Passengers' voices start to rise from all around the cabin. "Look, Mom, we're flying in the sky. Where should we go first when we get there?" I love this moment. My name is Bradley, and I'm 28 years old. Right now, I'm on a domestic flight for work. Would you like something to drink? Now that the plane has leveled off, the flight attendant, or FA, starts walking down the aisle with the cart. I consider ordering a coffee as I gaze out the window. The weather has been clear since morning, and the view outside is more spectacular than ever. Are we looking at the same thing right now, I wonder? Sir? Whoa! I was so engrossed in the view outside that I didn't notice her until she spoke to me. The FA had reached my seat at the front of the plane without me realizing it. Because I suddenly raised my voice, she looked at me with wide eyes. I'm sorry, I was worried you might not be feeling well. No, I'm fine, I'm sorry. I apologized and asked for coffee, then she replied with a bright smile, certainly. I couldn't help but be captivated by her smile. What a beautiful person, with such a gorgeous smile, I thought. People often say FAs are often beautiful, and seeing her, I had to agree. Her features are, of course, striking, and her brisk movements exude elegance. Her posture, standing tall and straight, is stunning as well. I couldn't help but follow her movements with my eyes until she handed me the cup of coffee. Here you go. It's hot, so please be careful. Oh, thank you. Smiling again, she turned around to attend to a passenger calling from the back. And that's when it happened. There was a snap, a sound like something popping. What was that? Although I frequently fly for work, I had never heard a sound like that before. Looking around to find the source of the noise, I glanced behind me and almost shouted, "Oh no!" The sound came from the flight attendant's skirt. The hook on her waist had broken, causing the seams of her skirt to open wide on both sides. And as she moved, the zipper started to slide down on its own. Oh no, I can't take this anymore. The moment her white underwear became visible through the opening of the zipper. I stood up from my seat and hurriedly took off my jacket. I'm sorry. What? As I covered the flight attendant's waist with my jacket, she turned around at the same time. In that instant, in my haste, I accidentally tripped. Sir, excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to save her from embarrassment and secretly tell her about the skirt while covering her with my jacket. But because I tripped, I lost my balance, and to onlookers, it looked like I was hugging her. Oh no, is this a pervert? What? A passenger who saw the scene muttered in a rather loud voice, which triggered the others. The other passengers began to stir, saying things like a pervert, here, and leaned into the aisle, all eyes now on us. I'm sorry. It's not what it looks like. I hurriedly distanced myself from her, trying to explain. But even so, I couldn't let go of the flight attendant's waist. If I did, the jacket would fall, and her underwear would be completely exposed. Then, at that moment, how long do you plan to keep touching me? She muttered in a low voice that only I could hear, then looked up and glared at me sharply. Her face looked like she was about to cry. Summer? What? Seeing her face, a name slipped from my lips. For a brief moment, the flight attendant furrowed her brows in confusion. Bradley? With a surprised expression, she said my name. Thanks for earlier, and sorry. I was a bit suspicious. It was after the plane had landed, and I was taking a break in the airport lobby. The flight attendant from earlier walked towards me. She was holding my neatly folded jacket. My skirt is fixed now, thanks to you. Oh, that's good, I'm glad to hear that. After she noticed the problem with her skirt, she hurried to the restroom, leaving me to spend the rest of the flight feeling like I was sitting on pins and needles because of the misunderstanding. But if she's Summer, my high school classmate, managed to avoid embarrassment, then it was worth it. I have to catch my next flight. See you later, Bradley. As soon as I took my jacket from her, Summer hurriedly ran back across the lobby. Watching her busy back, I thought. Then I noticed a note attached to my jacket. If you have time, I'd like to see you later. Seeing her familiar handwriting made my heart skip a beat. Summer, you made your dream come true. This chance encounter wasn't just with any classmate. She was the one I had a crush on 12 years ago. My name is Summer Winters. Isn't it funny to have both Summer and Winter in my name? It was the day we started high school. The girl sitting next to me said that, and her smile was as bright as the sun. No, I don't think it's strange or anything. Even before she spoke to me, I was already nervous because a cute girl was sitting next to me. With her smiling like that, I couldn't even think of responding properly. I just looked down and answered as best as I could. Nice to meet you, Bradley. Despite my unfriendly demeanor, Summer showed no sign of being bothered and extended her hand towards me. Ha! Let's shake hands. As in nice to meet you and let's get along handshake. What? In that moment, my heart was pounding so hard that I can't even remember if I shook hands with Summer or not. With her cute and incredibly cheerful personality, she quickly became the class favorite. I always watched her from afar, who was constantly surrounded by people. I couldn't possibly confess, I fell in love at first sight, even if the world were ending. I want to be a flight attendant. One day during lunch, Summer was unusually alone. As she unwrapped her bento box at her desk, she suddenly started talking to me. Bradley, have you ever flown on a plane? No, I haven't, but a flight attendant means cabin crew, right? Yes, that's right, I want to become a flight attendant. I haven't told anyone else yet. No one yet? So I was the first person to know about Summer's dream. I felt my heart skip a beat as she flashed me a bright smile. Do you think I can become a flight attendant, Bradley? In my mind, I immediately thought, you can do it. I heard that flight attendants need to be tall, because they have to help passengers with luggage in the overhead compartments. Summer, who was nearly 5 feet 7 inches and excelled at basketball in gym class, seemed perfect for it. Not to mention her kind personality and her attentiveness to others. I'm sure she'd quickly notice if any passengers needed help. I don't think you can do it, being a flight attendant. The words that came out were the opposite of what I felt because I was too shy. I imagined her as an adult, wearing the flight attendant uniform with a bright smile. In response to my words, Summer murmured, "Oh, that's right. If I stay like this, it's impossible." Summer? Please, Bradley. Be my teacher. What? From that day after school, I started teaching Summer English. Isn't English an essential skill for flight attendants? But I've always been clueless when it comes to English. I'm glad you agreed. Can I thank you with some bread from the school store? You don't have to. I'm not in any clubs at school, so I have time. I wasn't good at socializing, and my only merit was that my grades were above average. Inwardly, I was thrilled at the once-in-a-lifetime chance to get closer to the girl I had a crush on, thinking, yes. This structure is the present perfect tense we learned recently, so, like this. Do you get it? Let me see. When Summer tilted her head, a soft floral scent reached me. Each time, my heart would race, and I'd think things I could never tell her. I hope she never gets the hang of English. Oh, I get it now. Summer was already smart, so she quickly understood everything I taught her. Look. I improved by 30 points on the test. Maybe you're a genius for teaching me English, Bradley. No, I'm not. You should become a teacher. You'd be great at it. I can't. I probably couldn't even talk to the students. Is that so? Well then. Bradley, you should become a pilot. Summer casually suggested this. A pilot. Yeah. Since you're so smart, I think you'd make a great airplane pilot. No. That's way harder than becoming a teacher. If I become a flight attendant and you're the pilot of my plane, we could be together even when we're adults. What? Summer had a habit of saying outrageous things like that without a second thought. She was unaware of how nervous it made me, leaving me always worried that I might misunderstand her intentions. But eventually, those days came to an end. Hey, Brad. Did you seriously write "I want to be a pilot" on your career survey? About 3 months after I started spending time with Summer after school. While waiting for her in an empty classroom as usual, it was not Summer but a classmate named Adam who came in. Hey, what's the deal? You aiming to be a pilot, Bradley? We had been at the same school for half a year, coming from different middle schools, but Adam, who I had never spoken to before, put his arm around my shoulder with an overly familiar grin. It was clear he was mocking me. How do you know about that? I overheard you and Summer talking about it. I was curious if you were serious about it. Adam went to the same middle school as Summer. He had great grades and was excellent at sports. Unlike me, he was also good at socializing and had a lot of friends. There were even rumors that he liked Summer. I felt inferior and didn't like Adam very much. And at this moment, I clearly realized I hated him. What if it's true? Oh, really? Like that could never happen. What do you mean? Did you even check how much pilot training costs? It's at least $100,000. No way you could afford it, Bradley. Didn't know. Adam was saying this because my family was poor. About 2 weeks earlier, my father had suddenly passed away in an accident. With the loss of our family's breadwinner, my mother, who had been a homemaker, was managing to keep things going by working part-time jobs. I had 2 younger brothers, so just getting by was challenging enough. I didn't need Adam to tell me that I needed to give up on my budding dream. I'm not going to be a pilot. Is that so? Well, maybe I'll do it then. You know, my dad's a CEO, so I've got the luxury of trying the exams 2 or 3 times if needed. Adam? Right then, Summer, who had been running late, poked her head in. See you later, Adam said with a bright smile, giving me a pat on the shoulder as he left the classroom. Oh, Summer, I can teach you English. Bradley seems to be busy with all his family stuff. Oh, really? I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's okay. I didn't want Summer to know that I was taking care of the housework and looking after my brothers, while my mom worked, or that I was looking for a part-time job, because we probably wouldn't be able to afford tuition otherwise. That 1 hour after school with Summer was the only thing that kept me going. It wasn't long after Summer told me, "I'll have Adam teach me English," my family decided to move. We were going to live in the countryside where my mom's parents lived, as the cost of living was cheaper there than where we were now. When my mother told me we were moving, the first thing that came to mind was, I should confess to Summer. Even if nothing came of it, I knew I'd regret leaving without telling her how I felt. Summer, can I talk to you after school today? There's something I need to tell you. Summoning all my courage, I spoke to her at the desk next to mine. Knowing about my transfer, Summer didn't give me her usual bright smile. Instead, she looked down and mumbled, "Sorry." Oh. I guess you need to study English. It's not that. Bradley, can you be in the classroom after school today? What? There's something Laura wants to tell you. Laura was the classmate Summer was closest to at the time. Not knowing why, I waited in the classroom after school for Laura. And then, Bradley, I've liked you for a while. What? I was confessed to by Summer's best friend before I could tell Summer how I felt about her. After that, things became awkward between Summer and me. In the end, I never confessed, and the day of the transfer arrived. I'll become a flight attendant. I'll keep studying hard and, definitely. The last time I saw Summer, her eyes were full of tears. With a face that looked like she was about to cry, she handed me an envelope labeled, "To Bradley," and made a promise. You'll be a pilot too, right, Bradley? When we're on the same plane, we can fly together one day. Promise. I couldn't say either yes or I can't. I silently turned my back on her and left the school. It's been 12 years since then. Time sure flies. Yes, it's been 12 years since then, and today, I ran into Summer by pure chance. Thanks for coming. Are you sure it's okay with your schedule? Sitting across from me, she first expressed concern about my plans. That's just like Summer. Even though she looked so much more grown up, she was still the same on the inside, the same girl I had once liked. I'm just staying at a hotel tonight. That's great. So, can we have a drink together tonight? Sure. As always, she was good at making my heart skip a beat. When I laughed and said, I'd love to, Summer smiled brightly. Her smile was just as bright as the sun, just like back then. The note she handed me had the name of a restaurant near the airport. Arriving a little late, Summer wore a light green dress that matched the early summer season. Her makeup was more subdued than when she was on the plane, giving her a slightly youthful appearance. Even so, she was still a beautiful, mature woman. Even knowing she was a former classmate, I felt nervous around her. How's your mom doing, Bradley? Oh, she's doing well. She's farming with my grandparents now. My brothers have moved out, so she's just enjoying life at a leisurely pace. Have you been back to your family home, Summer? I've been too busy lately, so not really. I don't think I'll make it this summer either. Well, your work is busiest when everyone else is on holiday. As we ate dinner together, my nerves gradually eased, and we started to chat freely. Naturally, the conversation turned to my current situation. So, what are you doing for work these days, Bradley? I'm just an office worker. You know, the usual. I'm here on a business trip. I looked away from Summer slightly out of guilt. I wasn't able to keep the promise I made to her. I never became a pilot after all. I think you knew, Summer. Back then, things were pretty hard at home. Yes. It finally calmed down after a few years, but by that time, I didn't qualify to be a pilot anymore. What? It's my eyes. I pointed to my eyes. To be an airplane pilot, you must pass a legally mandated physical exam. Since pilots are responsible for so many lives, a vision test is naturally part of that. My eyesight didn't meet the passing criteria. I wear contacts now, but I still don't meet the requirements. When I realized that, I finally gave up. My mother worked day and night to raise 3 children. Even so, she managed to scrape together the entrance fee and said, "Now you can go to college." I was grateful and took out loans to attend university. While studying, I also worked several part-time jobs to help my mom with my brother's education, and that's about all I remember. Those 4 years were busy. Even so, I still wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to keep my promise to Summer. Some airlines train their pilots in-house, so even though I couldn't attend a flight school, I thought there might still be a path. But it might have been because I studied late into the night after work. When I started my 3rd year, my eyesight suddenly took a big dive. I was just about to start my job search and was looking for airlines with pilot training programs. I thought you must be doing great on your path to becoming a flight attendant. I mean, you must be close to achieving your dream by now. Compared to that, I felt like I'd thrown away our promise. I felt pathetic. Is that why you never contacted me? I waited for you, you know. I'm sorry. On the day I transferred, Summer handed me an envelope. The letter inside expressed gratitude for teaching her English and included her phone number. She had suggested many times, "Let's exchange numbers," but I always turned her down out of embarrassment. In truth, I really wanted to exchange numbers. But once I finally got her number in the end, I never contacted her. Bradley. In a slightly angry tone, Summer said my name. Suddenly, she downed her glass of wine in one go. Summer. Seriously, what is wrong with you? What do you mean, oh? I had a realization. Could Summer be talking about what happened 12 years ago? About what happened right before I transferred schools? I'm sorry. I didn't really know Laura that well. We'd hardly talked, so when she suddenly said she liked me, I thought it was some kind of prank. I'm not talking about you rejecting Laura. Summer raised her voice, her face slightly flushed from the alcohol. But when the surrounding customers all turned to look at her, she shrugged her shoulders and, lowering her voice, whispered, "I'm sorry. Why are you so lacking in confidence?" What? I would have been happy to hear from you, no matter what. You've worked so hard, and you were trying to keep our promise. Summer. Today, I realized something. No matter who you are, Bradley, She lifted her face and looked at me directly. Her eyes, clear and bright as if they could draw me in, glistened slightly with tears. They were so beautiful that I forgot what I wanted to say and just stared back. Bradley, back then, I couldn't say it because of Laura, but yeah. I couldn't hear the voices of the other customers or the classical music playing in the restaurant. It felt like my entire body became one big ear, listening intently to the words Summer was about to say. About you, Bradley. Hey, are you by any chance Brad? No, Bradley, right? Summer's voice was drowned out by a sudden shout. The person making a scene while pointing at me was a rugged man with suntan skin, a sharp face, and a crisp white shirt. I realized immediately who it was. Adam? That's right. It's been a while, Bradley. How have you been? Adam. Like Summer, he was a former classmate of mine and a person with whom I had a bit of a history. Oh, and Summer, what a coincidence. I didn't expect to see you here with Bradley. Adam. With a troubled expression, Summer stood up. Then she wobbled unsteadily on her feet. Are you okay, Summer? I think I had a little too much to drink. I'll be right back after I fix my makeup. She went to the restroom, and Adam took the opportunity to plop down into the seat she vacated. He shot me a sharp glare. I'll let it slide just this once. What do you mean? For having dinner with Summer. You know she's seeing me now, right? What? In the past, Adam and I were rivals in love. We both had feelings for Summer. But Adam had declared triumphantly that he was the one who won her heart. And... oh, by the way, I actually became a pilot. I'm working for the same airline as Summer. In fact, I was on the plane you flew in on today. Just to be clear, it wasn't my dad's connections. I mean, he paid for it, but I got the job on my own merits. Really? You get it, right, Bradley? Impatient with my lack of reaction, Adam stood up abruptly. He leaned over and got right in my face. Stay away from Summer from now on. I'm the one flying with her now. I'll be the one to make her happy. The competition is long over. The moment I got into flight school. No, the moment you were born into a family without money. Under the table, he stomped hard on my foot, as if that was the final word, then sat back in his chair with a satisfied grin. Just then, Summer returned. Oh, Adam, that's my seat. Sorry. Since I'm here, I thought I'd have a quick bite, too. I need to go over tomorrow's flight. You never do that. Sorry, Bradley. No, it's fine. So they were dating. Thinking about it, they seemed closer than just childhood friends. Summer looked apologetic as she didn't chase Adam away. While they discussed work, I tried to make myself invisible, shrinking into silence. I'm sorry we didn't get to talk much. Do you want to go somewhere else? Once we left the restaurant, Summer suggested that. But Adam was standing behind her, giving me a piercing glare, so I shook my head. No, I don't want to get in the way. In the way? It's getting late. I have work tomorrow, so I'll head out. Oh, that's a shame, especially since we finally got to see each other. Hearing Summer's words made me feel incredibly grateful. I was glad to have fallen for her, and despite my broken heart, I felt strangely at peace. I wish you happiness. Take care. I turned my back to Summer and started walking toward the hotel. I wasn't sure how far I'd walked. Suddenly, I heard the click-clack of someone running in heels behind me. No. What? With a loud thud, something hit my back hard. Surprised, I turned around to see Summer clinging to my back, panting for breath. Sorry, my legs just gave out. Are you okay? Why were you in such a hurry? Because I almost forgot to ask you something important. Something important. Regaining her balance and taking a deep breath, Summer stood straight and faced me. We'll meet again, right? Ignoring the passers-by, we gazed at each other. Summer. Hey, we haven't finished preparing for tomorrow. Let's go. Oh, Adam. The words I wanted to say, I really do want to see you again, were interrupted by Adam, who had followed Summer. He grabbed her arm and pulled her away from me. Don't make a move on Summer. If I see you again, remember this. He spat out that as he left. See you, Bradley. For sure. Summer glanced back at me several times as she disappeared into the bustling city with Adam. The two of them would be alone together from here on out. Let's go. Pushing aside the thoughts that had started creeping in, I turned around and walked back to the hotel. Goodbye, Summer. The next day, I was at the airport again for work. So this is the place. When I reached the meeting spot, the person I was supposed to meet hadn't arrived yet. Instead, Bradley? What are you doing here? The person lounging on a sofa noticed me and sat up. Adam. Hey, how'd you get in here? This is a special lounge only for selected people. Indeed. I was meeting someone in the special lounge at the airport. This calm and dimly lit space was lined with luxurious leather sofas. And the marble floor was polished so thoroughly that it made you hesitate to step on it. A private bar was also available, where you could enjoy drinks from around the world at any time. This so-called VIP room was reserved for only a select few first-class passengers. Come on, give me a break. Are you going to hang around me now, not just summer? No, it's not like that. I found it odd that Adam was here. Yawning as if he were at home, Adam stood up with a weary sigh, saying, "Oh, boy." He was wearing a pilot's uniform. It looked like he had a flight coming up. There are always customers who barge in uninvited, and they're always from economy class. I guess you need to be in a certain social class to figure out where you belong. What are you trying to say? Oh, I guess you didn't get it. They say that if there's a 20-point IQ difference, a conversation won't make sense, right? Bradley, who used to compete with me in grades, must have worn out his brain with work. Since I stayed silent, Adam lay back down on the sofa. He kicked off his shoes and lounged around as if he owned the place. Though he was just another employee at the airline operating this lounge. Are you allowed to be here, Adam? Me? Oh yeah, no problem. It's like my own room. I always rest here before a flight. I see. That being said, you get it now, right, Bradley? His smug face said more than words ever could, that he had everything I didn't. A career as a pilot. The right to come and go from this VIP lounge as he pleased, and summer. So, I'm going to take another nap. Time for you to leave, Bradley, since you came in by mistake. No. I'm here for a reason. A reason? As if you'd have. Here, Adam's expression shifted to one of sudden realization. A grin spread across his face. Are you here to clean? What? That makes sense. Go on, do your thing. What are you? You're a cleaner, right? Does Summer know you've fallen to that kind of job? What? What made me suddenly angry wasn't being mistaken for a janitor. It was Adam's tone, which looked down on both me and the cleaning profession. Adam, don't you know? Ha! He noticed the change in my expression. He sat up from the sofa and looked at me in confusion. Then, it happened all at once. He suddenly jumped up from the sofa as if he had been jolted by electricity. Mr. Irwin! What are you doing here? The person glaring at Adam with a suspicious look is a man even I knew. He is the president of the airline that managed this lounge, Mr. Irwin. This isn't a place for staff to take a break. Of course. Hey, you there, get out of here. Now. At first, Adam turned pale at Mr. Irwin's sudden appearance, but then he regained his confidence and grabbed my arm tightly. Get out of here, you loser janitor. He tried to drag me toward the exit, but that's when it happened. I asked you what you were doing, Adam. The windows in the lounge seemed to shake with the force of Mr. Irwin's voice as he yelled at Adam. I meant, you. How dare you talk like that to Bradley? Apologize to him immediately. What? Bradley? I apologize, Bradley. I'm sorry for my employee's behavior. Mr. Irwin bowed his head to me, his face pale. He was, in fact, the person I was supposed to meet. But Adam, still unable to grasp the situation, stood there with his mouth agape. Bradley, are you some kind of VIP? Don't be disrespectful, you fool. Our company wouldn't be here without him. What? Mr. Irwin pushed down on Adam's head with one hand. He forced Adam to bow his head to me and said, It's been a while. Thank you for all your help back then. Then, to a man over 30 years younger than himself, he gave a perfect, deep bow. I had to give up my dream of becoming a pilot due to my eyesight. After graduating from college, I got a job at a consulting firm in Tokyo, working on business turnarounds and performance improvement for companies. A few years later, when I began to be trusted with work independently. Bradley, how about helping turn around an airline? What? Thanks to a suggestion from my boss, Tyler, I ended up getting involved in an industry I never thought I'd be a part of. You're just going to tell us to cut labor costs. We don't have enough staff as it is. About 6 months ago, Mr. Irwin was much like Adam is now. He looked down on people in jobs that weren't directly related to the company's operations, like cleaning, which were essential to keeping the company running. He didn't realize his employees were becoming disengaged and was trying to save costs by cutting wages and relying on unpaid overtime to keep the company afloat. But it was like trying to put out a fire with a cup of water, and in the end, after persuasion from shareholders and executives, he reluctantly hired my firm as consultants. No, I don't intend to suggest any layoffs. There are plenty of other ways to turn around a company. I see. My deliberately challenging words seemed to pique Mr. Irwin's interest. He ordered his secretary to bring over a thick file. What's this? It's data for the 200 airplanes we operate. I don't dislike cocky youngsters, but I hate hearing them talk big without knowing anything. So first, how about you memorize this? He smirked as he watched me flip through the file without a word. His expression made it clear that he thought, you won't understand a thing just by looking at it. I took my time and went through the entire file. This aircraft is the same model as the one that had an accident in America last year. I handed the file back to the president, pointing to a specific page. I believe it is. You're quite knowledgeable, aren't you? The cause of the accident was aging. A typical passenger aircraft has a lifespan of about 20 to 25 years. Since this one is nearing 20 years, you should probably strengthen inspections. Good point. Well, then, let me show you something. I placed a file I had brought with me in front of Mr. Irwin. It was several times thicker than the one he had shown me. As he looked at it in surprise, I began flipping through the pages. First, look at this data. Domestic airlines A and B have a sufficient ratio of employees to company size. I believe this company also has enough staff, but the issue is the concentration of employees in certain departments. This is a summary of a case in Italy where a company in financial difficulty reduced excessive services for passengers. When comparing the recent jet fuel prices, costs can be reduced by flying through this country. If you reflect that in the ticket prices, you can see. With each page I turned, Mr. Irwin's face grew paler. Then, before I even reached the halfway point, Mr. Irwin suddenly called out, "Wait. I understand, you're well versed in various areas of this industry. You've studied well, but for a mere consultant, I knew too much." Only 3 days after he had hired me, Mr. Irwin pointed out the depth of my knowledge. I corrected his words. 11 years. Pardon. 11 years, Mr. Irwin. That's how long I've wanted to enter this industry. Until I found out about my eyesight issues, I was determined to become a pilot. Even when my mom said, "It's okay, you don't need to worry about money anymore," I continued working multiple part-time jobs to save up for flight school. I studied the airline industry day and night for preparation. Even after realizing I couldn't become a pilot, I couldn't switch my mindset. It became a habit to keep up with news about the airline industry. That continued even after I started working. Even though I wasn't part of the airline industry, I might have known more about it than people who actually worked in it. So what do you think, Mr. Irwin? Based on my observations, I believe there are many areas for improvement in your company. Will you entrust me with the task? Yes, please. I'm counting on you, Bradley. The advice Bradley gave us, based on his vast knowledge, was incredibly accurate. Thanks to him, our company didn't just avoid bankruptcy. It grew to become one of the leading companies in the industry. And the reason I clean the office every morning is, of course, thanks to Bradley's advice. What? You didn't know, Adam? I'm the one who keeps not only the company but also the floor of this lounge sparkling clean. What? Along with various management reforms, one of the suggestions I made to Mr. Irwin was about cleaning. Walking around the office while cleaning would surely reveal many problems. And it would help them realize that cleaning is not a job to be looked down upon. Since I started cleaning myself, I realized how foolish I'd been. Every job and position has its challenges and merits. There is no one you should ever look down on. No way. Finally, Adam realized. He realized that in front of Mr. Irwin, he had not only mistaken me for a janitor but also disparaged the cleaning profession. His face went pale as he continued to glare at me with frustration and said, "You should have told me sooner if that's the case." But he was quickly stopped by Mr. Irwin, who berated him again. "What, you haven't learned your lesson yet? I'm sorry. I've heard rumors. There's a pilot who likes to throw around his father's name, a shareholder, to do whatever he pleases. He forces other employees to do menial tasks and covers up his slacking. I can't believe he's even using this lounge for himself. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Not to mention, you've left dirty footprints on the floor I cleaned with care. This proves you neglect to shine your shoes. How can a pilot who can't even keep his shoes clean be trusted with the safety of passengers? You'll be removed from your duties for a while and go back to basics and retrain." No way. With Mr. Irwin's reprimand, Adam collapsed onto the floor. Though he had been promoted to co-pilot, he was removed from piloting duties and would have to retrain alongside the rookies. Every morning, he'd join Mr. Irwin in cleaning the company. Everyone in the company saw him like this, and his pride was shattered. He became scared of being seen and started living as if he were hiding from everyone. "My apologies for keeping you waiting, Bradley. Let's head to the company right away." "Yes, of course. I look forward to it today." Encouraged by Mr. Irwin, I finally left the lounge. It was almost 6 months after the consultation ended, so today was like a regular checkup. I wanted to see for myself if any new management issues had arisen. I felt that Mr. Irwin would be okay now, though. "By the way, Bradley, about what we discussed the other day." Mr. Irwin suddenly turned around, smiling widely. "The other day. I won't let you forget. I'm talking about the arranged marriage with my daughter. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that today." "Oh, right, that. Please. Bradley, I wouldn't mind skipping the engagement and heading straight to marriage." Ha ha. I had laughed it off many times before, but Mr. Irwin was getting more enthusiastic. It seemed like it wouldn't be long before he brought his daughter to the office. How was I going to talk my way out of this one? It seemed more challenging than turning around the company. The next day, I was waiting for my flight back to Tokyo in the airport lobby. Then, someone sat down in the seat next to me. "Summer. So it was you, Bradley. You were the one who helped save our company," Summer said with a bright smile. She had been curious about who had saved the company from bankruptcy 6 months ago. This morning, the topic came up at work, and she learned the consultant's name for the first time. It turned out to be me. So maybe we passed each other at the company many times without noticing. Me too. I can't believe you were so close all this time. What a surprise. She chuckled in her flight attendant uniform, looking more beautiful than ever. I realized I still had feelings for her. I love Summer's smile. Her bright personality, how she can be a bit of a scatterbrain while still being so reliable. But, Summer, you're with Adam. Hey, Bradley, what did you mean by "I wish you happiness"? What? The night before last. Who am I supposed to be happy with? Wait, you're not with Adam? As soon as I said it, Summer began waving her hands wildly. No, no. There's nothing like that between us. What? Adam's been spreading those rumors at work on his own. What? According to Summer, Adam was so serious about her that he became a pilot just to be with her. But since Summer didn't care about him, Adam started working his way from the outside in. He spread lies to their co-workers, saying that they were dating. It's been a real problem. When he says he needs to talk about work, I can't ignore it, right? It could be important. But then people start saying it's a date. Oh. I realized there was another thing I liked about Summer. How serious and responsible she was about her job. She truly loved her work as a flight attendant. And I've liked someone else since middle school. What? I felt like I'd been struck in the head. Summer, unaware of my feelings, gave me a bright, happy smile. You've helped me again. Back in high school with English and with the company. And also, during high school entrance exams. You've always helped me, Bradley. During the exams. Oh, so you really don't remember. Look. Saying that, she messed up the neatly arranged bangs she had for her flight, hiding her eyes. Then she curved her lips downward into a pout. Oh, you were that girl? Memories from long ago suddenly came rushing back to me. On the day of the high school entrance exam, there had been heavy snowfall in the area since morning. I was walking carefully to the exam venue, trying not to slip. Suddenly, someone came running up behind me. No! A girl wearing a uniform from another middle school slipped and fell spectacularly as she passed me. Thank you. She took my outstretched hand hesitantly and got up. She was quite tall. She had long legs like a model, but she was hunched over with her long bangs hiding her eyes, and she seemed nervous and timid. Thank you, thank you. She kept looking back at me and bowing her head repeatedly. Watching her, I thought it was a shame. Just the night before, there was a TV program featuring airports. They said taller people have an easier time handling overhead luggage. If she straightened her back, she would excel and look great in those uniforms. You said I'd make a great flight attendant or something. I thought about it a lot during the exam. Even though I didn't think I could ever be like those amazing people on TV. But I wanted to try. That one comment of mine sparked her interest in becoming a flight attendant. After the exams were over, she researched how to become one and decided she needed to change herself first. After I cut my bangs, practiced walking with a straight back, and spent lots of time practicing my smile in front of the mirror, something strange happened. I started liking my height, which I used to hate. And I grew to like looking people in the eye and smiling. Because of my dream of becoming a flight attendant, I began to like who I was. So, it's all thanks to you. Your words, Bradley, saved me when I was full of insecurities. Summer, who actually became a flight attendant, smiled brightly like the sun. Summer, so you were that girl from back then. That boy has always been the one I like. Even if Bradley gets married someday. Wait, married? Summer tilted her head and asked, Isn't that right, seeing my surprise? Because someone at work said they heard a rumor about you, the amazing consultant who saved the company. Having an arranged marriage with Mr. Irwin's daughter. The president was so excited, saying it was only a matter of time before the wedding. No. That's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Now Summer looked surprised. I turned down the proposal. I told them I already have someone I love enough to want to marry. What? I thought the same, even if you were dating someone. But you're really not with Adam? Suddenly, tears welled up in Summer's eyes, and in an instant, they spilled over. No. Sorry. I didn't mean to doubt you, Summer. I can't stop them. Not at all. She seemed happy and relieved. Finding out that the person she loved also loved her. Summer smiled while wiping her tears. I saw an expression on her face that I had never seen before. I knew then that I wanted to fall in love with all her expressions from here on out. I'll keep in touch, Summer. All the time from now on. Yeah, me too. Smiling brightly, she leaned against my shoulder. I couldn't help but cherish the warmth of her presence next to me. Since this was her workplace, I just barely resisted the urge to hug her tight. The news about how I turned around Summer's company spread quickly throughout the industry. Many airlines reached out to me, asking for consultations. I ended up flying all over Japan, and I became incredibly busy. Even though we were both busy, I always traveled using Summer's airline, so we were happy to see each other more often. A year later, Summer and I got married. Though Mr. Irwin was disappointed about the arranged marriage, he was thrilled about me marrying one of his employees. The entire company celebrated us. With so many people watching over us, we embarked on a new journey, but we chose not to live together. I love seeing you work so hard, Summer. And I love seeing you help people and bring smiles to their faces, Bradley. As long as we had these feelings, we knew we'd be fine even apart. Whenever I saw contrails in the sky, I thought of Summer. And whenever I flew on a plane, I wanted to stand tall and meet her. Every day I devoted myself to my work, striving to help those who needed me. Losing a dream is painful and difficult. Just as it was for me. But I also gained so much afterward. I found a rewarding and wonderful career. The things I cultivated for my dream helped me to assist others. and I was able to be with the person I loved most. The end of a dream isn't just filled with sadness. It's also a beginning. So I hope that those who have lost their dreams will hold their heads high and make a new start, and from my current happiness, I'll continue to send encouragement to anyone struggling beyond the skies, now and always. Could you please let just this child stay for the night? In the middle of a freezing winter night, a mother and her child, dressed in ragged clothes, appeared in front of my rundown apartment. I couldn't just leave this fragile-looking pair out in the cold. Well, okay, just for one night. When I finally took a good look at their faces, I realized the woman was stunningly beautiful. With my heart pounding, I ended up spending the night with them. My name is Ben. I'm in my 30s, broke, with no hobbies, no girlfriend, and working a dead-end job. To top it off, I'm a corporate drone. I was raised by a single mother in what you could call a stereotypically poor household, but thanks to her tearful efforts, I made it through high school. I was planning to start working after graduation, but she pushed me, saying, "Go to college, get a good job, and make life easier for me." With her raspy voice from too much drinking urging me on, I took on the challenge of college entrance exams and managed to get into college. Now, I'm slowly trudging down the path of corporate slavery, burdened with student loans. Ever since I started working, I've been sending a small amount of money to my mom each month. But the woman who pushed me to do so is still working with that same raspy voice, proudly saying, "I'm still young, so I don't need to rely on you." Yet, after each monthly transfer, I get a thank you message online, something she still hasn't quite gotten the hang of. She's sneaky like that. When I visit home occasionally, she smiles and says, "You better treat me to something good when you come back." The crow's feet at the corners of her eyes seem to deepen every year. If I mentioned that, my rough around the edges mom would probably smack me on the head. It must have been tough for my uneducated mom to raise me on her own. She believed that if I just went to college, I'd get a well-paying job and lead a comfortable life. Because of that belief, she made sure I got through college. Now, I can't bring myself to complain about the reality of working long hours for low pay and barely scraping by with student loan payments. It may sound pessimistic, but I've inherited my mom's mindset of as long as you're alive, you're winning and things will work out somehow. I might as well admit it, I'm easygoing and tend to avoid conflict. Thanks to this personality, aside from being broke, I've managed to muddle through life fairly well. I'm like one of those background characters in a comic, someone who never stands out as the protagonist. But background characters are crucial in the real world. It's people like us who keep the world turning, enduring unfairness to maintain order. There's no such thing as a world filled only with protagonists. So cold. It's 1 a.m. on December 24th. Attending the company's year-end party is practically mandatory. Of course, being the corporate drone I am, I couldn't skip it. Despite the busy end-of-year schedule, I found myself drinking with colleagues I didn't particularly like, sipping on alcohol I didn't particularly enjoy. Now, I'm on my way home, slightly tipsy, exhaling white puffs into the cold air. The warmth from the alcohol that had heated my body earlier has long since dissipated, leaving me feeling chilled to the bone. With the scent of snow in the air. The weather woman said last month that this winter would be likely to be mild. I wonder how she'll explain herself on tomorrow's broadcast. Hope I wake up to a snowstorm that stops the trains tomorrow. As I pondered this, arriving at my castle, my 35-year-old, rundown apartment, I suddenly heard a voice. "Excuse me." I was trying to climb the creaky stairs as quietly as possible when someone called out to me from below. The thought of someone speaking to me in the dead of night, especially from down by my feet, made me jump. In the shadows under the stairs was a woman. Next to her was a smaller figure, huddling close. What is it? Naturally, I felt a surge of caution towards someone speaking to me at this hour. "Could you please let us in?" Well. She insisted, just for one night or no, even just until the first trains start running, until we can get into the station. As I tried to gather my thoughts, the woman quickly ran up to the bottom of the stairs. I didn't want to cause any trouble in front of my thin-walled apartment building at this hour. I sighed, letting out a puff of white breath, and turned to face the voice. The flickering light of the fluorescent bulb revealed the woman's face, which I hadn't been able to see clearly in the darkness. "She's gorgeous." I was at a loss for words, stunned by the beauty of the woman before me. Please, at least take in my child. I'm begging you. She held a little girl close as she pleaded. The girl, who seemed to have inherited her mother's fair complexion, was trembling so much that even in the dim light, her pale skin appeared almost blue. The sight of the desperate mother and child huddled together was filled with a sense of despair, yet, to my shame, I found it oddly enchanting. It's like a painting of the Virgin Mary or something, I thought to myself. It seems the alcohol hadn't fully worn off, even though I thought the cold had sobered me up. Well, if it's just for one night. Scratching my head, I reluctantly gave them permission to stay for the night. As I glanced outside, I noticed sleet beginning to fall, unable to fully turn into snow. A few days later. Welcome home. I'm back. Greeting me as I returned from work was Anna, the beautiful woman I took in on Christmas Eve. What was supposed to be a one-night stay in my rundown apartment has turned into a temporary refuge for the mother and child. When I saw them in the brighter light of my apartment, I realized just how thin they both were. And I learned that they had been living like homeless people for over a week. They had run out of money, and that's when the cold, snowy night caught up with them. Even though I was a bit tipsy that night, I'm not the kind of person who could just throw them out once I'd taken them in. The fact that their clothes were relatively clean suggested they had once lived a better life. I'm curious about how such a beautiful woman and her child ended up homeless, but knowing wouldn't change anything, so I haven't asked. Besides, it's honestly a bit too much trouble to find out more. Hi, Emily. Hi. Anna's daughter, Emily, is 5 years old. She's an extremely quiet child. Are kids her age usually this quiet? It might be unfair to compare her to myself at that age. I was always running around with a snotty nose even after being scolded by my mom, but she seems unusually subdued. In fact, she seems to be aware of my presence, almost as if she's holding back. And sometimes, she speaks in a surprisingly mature way for her age. Whether it's caution or something else, I haven't seen her smile even once in the few days they've been here. This looks delicious. Please, eat as much as you like. Every evening, a meal is now prepared on my small table. Honestly, the fact that I'm still letting them stay might have something to do with these meals. Supporting the two of them financially is pretty tough, but my laid-back attitude of it'll work out somehow keeps me from worrying too much. Tonight, the table is filled with the delicious aroma of ginger pork. Sitting down to a warm dinner every night with the mother and child almost feels like. So this is what a family dinner feels like. The words slipped out before I realized it, and Anna, who was eating across from me, looked at me with a puzzled expression. Oh, the ginger pork is really good. I quickly stuffed a piece of pork into my mouth to cover my embarrassment. Yes, it's nice to share a meal with others, isn't it? As someone raised in a single-parent household, I never had the experience of sitting down to dinner with family. My mom was often working late, so I usually ate alone. Anna's gentle smile in response to my comment, without any hint of denial, made me feel a bit ticklish inside. Not bad. The mild taste of the miso soup I sipped to hide my embarrassment was just to my liking. After dinner, as I lazed around watching videos, I noticed Emily quietly tinkering with something in the corner of the room. Over the past few days, I had only seen her reading what seemed like complicated books for a child her age, so I was curious and decided to ask. Emily, what are you working on? A puzzle, Emily replied, startled by my voice. Hesitantly, she showed me what she was working on. It wasn't the usual puzzle where you fit pieces together to create a picture. Instead, it was a wooden puzzle where you had to fit specific shapes into a mold using only the designated pieces. Curious, I asked Emily to explain how it worked, and I decided to give it a try myself. But as I increased the difficulty, it turned out to be quite challenging. I found myself sitting cross-legged in front of the puzzle, scratching my head in frustration. Emily, who seemed unsure at first, eventually joined in and started helping me. Like this, here. Wow. That's amazing. In the end, Emily effortlessly completed even the most difficult puzzles, leaving me in awe and abandoning any attempt to solve them on my own. Am I weird? Emily asked, her eyes filled with uncertainty. Huh? You're not weird at all. It's incredible that you can solve something this hard so easily. I can't do it myself. Emily's face lit up at my words, and for the first time, I saw her smile, a smile that made her look her age. It made me so happy that I couldn't help but smile too, and we continued playing with the puzzle together. From that day on, Emily seemed to warm up to me, and she started talking to me more often. "Can I look at this, Ben?" She pointed to a book on programming and web design. It was one of those books I had bought a few years ago when I decided to learn something new, given my lack of hobbies. Though it seemed too advanced for a 5-year-old, I didn't see any harm in letting her try, so I recommended the simplest one. Aimed at elementary school kids. Sure, you can read any of these books if you like. You can also use this laptop if you want. Feeling that she might enjoy it, I handed her my old, dusty laptop. Well, if it keeps her entertained, why not? That casual thought soon led Emily to become completely absorbed in the books and the computer. That year turned out to be one for the history books. A new virus spread worldwide, throwing everyone into a panic. Japan was no exception, and by mid-February, many companies, including mine, where I worked in the travel industry, had started implementing remote work. "Would you like some lunch?" Just past noon, Anna peeked through the sliding door of my tiny 2-bedrooms apartment to ask me quietly. "You can talk normally, I'm on my lunch break." With that, I decided to eat the lunch Anna had prepared for me. Sitting cross-legged at the table with the documents I needed to review still in hand, I found a plate of omelette placed right in front of me. "Wow, a fancy lunch." "Thanks." My usual instant noodles for lunch had been unexpectedly upgraded thanks to remote work. Anna's cooking was always delicious, and I was genuinely grateful for it. "I'm glad you like it. Just be careful not to get ketchup on your papers." Anna, who had started speaking more casually with me than before, seemed to enjoy watching me eat, especially since I always exclaimed, "This is delicious," no matter what she cooked. Today, too, she sat sipping tea, smiling as she watched me enjoy my meal. "Is that the name of the company you work for, Ben?" Suddenly, Anna's gaze landed on the name of the company printed on my documents. "Yeah, I don't think I ever mentioned it before." I responded absent-mindedly, still looking at the papers. But when Anna didn't reply, I glanced up at her, curious. "What's wrong? You look pale." "Oh, it's nothing." "It's definitely not nothing." Her obvious discomfort made me press her further. "The CEO's son of that company, he's Emily's father." After a long pause, Anna finally revealed the truth. "What? Are you talking about Mr. Johnson's son? You're saying he's Emily's father? Does that mean you were married to him?" But as far as I knew, Mr. Johnson's son was still single, so many questions swirled in my head. We were never married. There was never any formal registration. He is Emily's father, but he never acknowledged her. I was at a loss for words, struggling to process what she was saying. But realizing my lunch break was almost over, I suggested we continue the conversation later in the evening. The rest of the afternoon was a blur, with Anna's words replaying in my mind, making it hard to concentrate on work. Finally, around 9 p.m., after Emily had gone to sleep, I sat down with Anna to hear the rest of the story. I used to be his secretary. The son of my company's CEO, Ken Johnson, is slated to be the next CEO, but he also runs another company. Anna revealed that she had worked as his secretary at that company. As they worked together, their relationship deepened, but without ever officially becoming a couple, which left Anna feeling increasingly uneasy. It was during this time that she became pregnant with Emily. When she informed Ken about the pregnancy, he casually asked, "Are you planning to keep it?" When Anna expressed her desire to have the baby, he responded, "Well, okay, then. Why don't you move into my apartment?" Recognition? "Oh, sure. I'll take care of that. I'll handle all the paperwork when the time is right, so don't worry." Taking his word for it, Anna moved into his apartment and eventually gave birth to Emily. Things seemed to be going smoothly until Emily turned 3 and started attending daycare. Around that time, Ken stopped coming home regularly. When Emily turned 4, he dropped the bombshell that he was planning to marry another woman. Despite having lived with Anna and their child, Ken never married her, nor did he officially acknowledge Emily as his daughter. Anna confessed that she had confronted Ken countless times during her pregnancy, only for him to evade the issue each time. When she persisted, Ken finally said, "If you keep pushing, you should leave the apartment." "I won't acknowledge the child, you know? Do you really want to raise a child without a father? But if you listen to me, I'll recognize the child and talk to my parents about getting married when the time is right. Which option is better for your child?" His soft yet manipulative tone made his cruelty even more evident. Over time, Anna became so conditioned that she stopped questioning Ken, unable to see how abnormal the situation had become. Then, last December, just after Emily turned 5, Anna was abruptly thrown out of the apartment with nothing. With no parents or relatives to rely on, Anna had lived as a homeless person for over a week before she met me. After hearing her story, I muttered, "That's just unbelievable." Anna, on the verge of tears, gave a small, bitter smile and looked down. "It's my fault. I kept asking him to marry me, even during my pregnancy. But he kept dodging the question, and when I pushed too hard, he threatened not to acknowledge Emily. Eventually, I stopped saying anything at all. I thought I was doing what was best for Emily, but in the end, I just ended up hurting her more than anyone else. I'm such an idiot, believing in him until it came to this. I'm a failure as a mother." Watching Anna clench her thin arms so tightly that they trembled was heartbreaking. I know Ken Johnson well. As far as I know, he's never flaunted his status as the CEO's son and has always been kind to his subordinates. But is what Anna said really true? Is it possible that he's not the man I thought he was? Let's talk to Ken. I know him, so I can try to arrange a meeting. But the apartment is already gone, and the only place I could go is his office. I'll make an appointment. There's a board meeting at our company this week, and Ken should be there. I'll ask him to meet you. Just wait for now. I feel bad for dragging you into this, Ben. Don't worry about it. We're already in this together, right? Thank you." A few days later, on the day I had to go into the office, there was a board meeting. I waited until the meeting ended and approached Ken Johnson. "Mr. Johnson, could I have a word with you?" "Ben, it's been a while. What can I do for you?" Our company isn't very large. So Ken knew all the names of the people on the administrative floor, making him a likable boss. He was friendly and easy to talk to, someone I'd always thought highly of. No, I hadn't. Until I heard Anna's story the other day. If everything she said is true, then Ken is a serious scumbag. Even now, as I speak to him, I'm still half doubting whether the man in front of me could really be that cruel. I'd like to arrange a meeting with someone if you have some time. Oh? With me? A client? No, it's a woman named Anna. I watched his expression closely as I mentioned her name. Let's talk in another room, he said, his smile still in place, but his previously warm demeanor seemed to turn cold and sharp. Looks like Anna might be right about him being a scumbag, I thought to myself. As soon as we entered the smallest meeting room, Ken was the first to speak. "So, why does she want to meet with me?" He was likely trying to gauge how much I knew. "I think you have a good idea of her reasons, given your relationship with her." "How much do you know? And what's your connection to her?" "I know the circumstances that led to her and her daughter's current situation. As for our relationship, we're friends." "What are you trying to achieve here?" His tone was guarded, carefully choosing his words to avoid giving away anything unnecessary. "All I'm asking is for you to sit down and talk with her." "No. There's no need for that." His cold response made me reflexively push back. "She's your daughter, isn't she? Aren't you going to pay child support? Oh, so this is about money? Did she tell you I'm the father? Why would I pay when there's no proof she's my child? You promised her you'd acknowledge the child, didn't you?" "Did I? And she told you that, huh? No contract, no guarantee. You understand the basics of a contract, right? But did it ever occur to you that you might be getting played? She's a beautiful woman. I'm sure she's fooled plenty of men. With a face like that, she could make a lot of money, even with a kid in tow." "What the hell are you saying?" His half-smiling, disgustingly cynical remarks made my blood boil. "Calm down, it was just a joke. No need to get so worked up." You're really invested in her, huh? But that's none of my concern. Anyway, I have no obligation to meet with her. As if to signal that the conversation was over, Ken made a move to leave. Does Mr. Johnson know about this? I asked, stopping him. Are you trying to blackmail me? For the first time, Ken's smile vanished. Damn it, I've really screwed up. I thought, realizing too late that I'd made a serious misstep. Threatening your superior. You really don't know your place, do you? Ken flashed a smile again before leaving the room. The next day, while working remotely from home, I received an email on my computer. It was a termination notice. Of course, I saw this coming, I muttered. I had expected them to try to fire me for misconduct, but maybe they realized I could challenge that as wrongful termination. Instead, they claimed I was being let go for failing to meet job expectations, which was still unfair but more legally sound. Even though this ordinary dismissal was communicated via email without a formal written notice, it was still something I could contest. However, taking on a small, exploitative company like this, as opposed to a major corporation, would be an uphill battle. Especially since the person who made the decision is none other than Ken, an executive and the next CEO. The odds are definitely not in my favor. At least they promised to pay my severance, plus 1 month's salary for the remaining paid leave. Well, this is a mess. I sighed, taking off my computer glasses and looking up at the ceiling. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. Anna cried out. I got myself involved, so it's not your fault, Anna, I reassured her. I debated how much to tell her, but considering the situation, I knew I couldn't keep it from her. So, I told her about my termination. Anna looked like she was about to cry, apologizing me, while I apologized for not being able to arrange a meeting between her and Ken. No, it's okay. I can't afford to keep wallowing. For Emily's sake, and for yours, too, Ben. I was surprised to hear that she considered doing something for me. I haven't really done anything. Well, I've let you stay here, so I guess I've done something. But you've been making great meals and contributing with part-time work, so it's pretty much even. Don't worry about it. Thank you, really. Anna finally smiled, and I felt a sense of relief. Now, it's time to start job hunting again. Maybe I can find something with better conditions, I said, trying to sound upbeat, but inside, I was starting to feel the pressure. Given the current situation, finding a new job might not be easy. My last day at work would be the end of March. I had less than a month to find a company willing to hire someone mid-career. And to make matters worse, I had been fired. It was clear that getting to the interview stage would be challenging. On top of that, the world was in turmoil this year. Every industry was likely facing significant disruptions. In fact, the travel-related companies were already feeling the effects. Hey, Ben, have you thought about starting your own company? What? I was lost in thought, staring into space when Anna's unexpected suggestion left me speechless. What kind of company are you talking about? Her sudden talk of starting a business was so vague that I had to urge her to elaborate. I want to show you something, Anna said, calling out to Emily, who was, as usual, engrossed in her computer in the next room. Emily, show Ben what you've been working on. Emily opened the laptop and showed me the screen. Wait, is this? No way. Looks like it's time for a comeback, right? Anna's face lit up with a bright and excited expression, one I hadn't seen before. I'm in too. Let's get this plan rolling. I couldn't help but laugh at their enthusiasm, which was contagious. All right, let's do this. The three of us, aiming for a major comeback in life. At this point, I decided to embrace the whatever happens, happens attitude. I was all in for this gamble. Nearly a year has passed since then. The business we started has been thriving. We launched an e-commerce site, focusing on items like souvenirs and meals from accommodations that were previously only available on-site at tourist destinations. In the beginning, we hustled to secure partnerships with tourist associations, accommodations, and rail companies. But the ongoing pandemic and the resulting stay-at-home orders allowed us to secure many contracts. In a way, my previous job had prepared me well for this venture. The company took shape within the first month of its launch, and although it's bittersweet to say, The challenging global situation contributed to our success. We've since expanded the business, and it's been steadily growing. The real credit for our success goes to Emily. She's something of a prodigy. Using the books and the laptop I gave her, she taught herself to build a website and decided what products to sell on our e-commerce platform. Emily has an incredible ability to understand trends and anticipate what's coming next. Of course, as a child, some of her ideas were too far-fetched or impractical, and her web designs often had flaws. But her creativity and early programming skills were astonishing. Though I'm listed as the company's CEO, the initial idea for the business came from Emily. For the finer details in dealing with clients, I had the support of Anna, who is an excellent salesperson and secretary. Although things seem to be going smoothly now, I was really stressed when we first started the company. The main issue was, of course, funding. Even in an age where you can technically start a business with zero capital, you still need some money to establish a company. Even though I managed to launch the business using my small savings and severance pay, the thought of being in the red was terrifying. Rent, food, student loan repayments. Living costs money. And on top of that, I wouldn't be able to send money to my mom anymore. I called my mom to tell her that I had been laid off, was thinking about starting a company, and that I might not be able to send her money for a while. You're starting a business? Do you even have the money for that? Well, I'll manage somehow. But are you going to be okay without the money I send? It's going to be tough. Don't underestimate your mother. I told you before, didn't I? I'll be fine without relying on you. Stop pretending to be so tough, you idiot. Later, my mother handed me some money. It was almost the exact amount I had been sending her as support since I started working. If you succeed, take me on a trip abroad. And someday, bring those important people in your life over to visit. I realized then that I'd never be able to fully repay my mother. Wow, Emily, this is amazing. It's really fun. We had gone out to a diner for lunch for the first time in a while, and we were chatting through the acrylic divider, still wearing our masks. I was starting to get used to this way of dining. The tablet in front of me displayed a puzzle game. It was an original, free game that Emily had created herself. Her programming skills had improved even further. Next, I want to make a game with a story. She had big dreams. But knowing her, it was entirely possible. Emily, who was starting school this year, had grown incredibly over the past year. Not only had she begun to look more like a young lady, but her manner of speaking, which was already mature, had become even more sophisticated. Shortly after our business took off, we moved out of the old, run-down apartment and rented 2 slightly nicer units in a new building. Although it was a bit sad that our improved financial situation meant they no longer needed to live with me, I was thrilled when Anna said, "I often end up working in your apartment anyway, so let's just live in the same building." Last month, someone at the Developmental Support Center suggested that Emily and I visit a mental health clinic. They did a Wechsler intelligence scale test there, and they think she might be gifted. While Emily was comfortable talking with people she knew well, like Anna and me, she struggled to fit in with unfamiliar people or in groups of kids her age, often having trouble keeping up with others or communicating smoothly. Anna said she first noticed something different about Emily when she was around 3 years old. When Emily became deeply engrossed in something, she would lose sight of everything around her, and her language skills developed unusually fast. On the other hand, Emily often had tantrums at daycare. She was also said to struggle with following the teacher's instructions and tended to insist on doing things her own way, which made her seem lacking in cooperation. Ken apparently called Emily creepy. He went as far as to say she was a failed case of developmental disability. Is being gifted really something creepy? Emily, still not fully understanding what being gifted meant, looked down, feeling dejected. Why would you think that? Emily, you're not creepy at all. Anna said, quickly bending down to meet her daughter's eyes. The hatred directed at this little girl at such a young age was still deeply wounding her. But I'm weird and creepy, isn't that why Mom and I were abandoned? I felt a surge of anger rise within me, a fury I had been trying to bury since that man came into our lives. Perhaps Emily's difficulty in connecting with others stemmed from being overly sensitive to people's emotions. Emily, you're not creepy at all. You talk to me, play games with me, and work with me. You're amazing. Emily looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears. Really? I would never lie to you, Emily. Do you know where the word gifted comes from? No. Does it have a meaning? Gifted comes from the word gift. Your talent is a gift from God, and you, Emily, are a gift to me and Anna. You make us happy just by being you. Hearing this, Emily's large eyes overflowed with tears. Thank you. I'm happy when Mom and you are happy, too. Her tearful expression made my heart ache with a sweet, tender feeling. Is this what they call paternal instinct? I met Anna's gaze, and I noticed her eyes were also moist, her nose slightly red. Thank you. She whispered, her words causing that tender ache in my chest to intensify. I had never felt so frustrated by masks and acrylic dividers as I did at that moment. A few days later, I received an unexpected appointment request. It's been a while. Mr. Johnson. I found myself standing in Ken's office. I'm sorry to trouble you by coming here, but it's good to see you're doing well, Ben. Ken said, his unpleasant smile apparent even behind his mask. And you too. Anna, Emily. Yes, for some reason, Ken had insisted that Anna and Emily come along. I had been adamant about refusing, but Anna agreed to it. Despite my protests on the way here, Emily, more composed than I was, tried to calm me down, saying, Ben, Mom's made up her mind. So let's just go with it. Please get to the point, I said. I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. So I pushed him to state his business right away. Why so cold? It's not often that a family gets to reunite. Ken remarked, causing Anna to visibly react. What do you want? I repeated, making it clear I wasn't interested in small talk. All right, let's get to it. It's simple. I want to buy your company's business, he said. A business acquisition, just as I had expected. Does your father, Mr. Johnson, know about this? I asked. My father isn't involved. This is my company's business, not his. It has nothing to do with his company, Ken replied. But your father is the majority shareholder, isn't he? I pressed. I suspected that his father had likely funded Ken's company as well. It was clear Ken wanted to handle this behind his father's back. Do you really think a small company like yours can stand up to us? Ken retorted. I'm no longer your subordinate. I have no reason to comply. As the representative of my company, I'll respond to your proposal. It's not in our best interest, so we decline, I said calmly. Ken's eyes narrowed, losing their former curve. I've heard about your company, about how much Anna and Emily have contributed. As expected of my daughter, she's brilliant. I could give her a much better education than she could get with you. Ken continued, turning to Anna and Emily. Lowering his mask to his chin, he smiled and added, Anna, let's get married this time. Emily, don't you want to live with your real father? It's sad for a child to grow up with a single mother. Especially when she's about to start school. I clenched my fists so tightly on my knees that I thought I might draw blood. But then, Anna's cold, white hand gently rested on mine. I'm sorry, but I don't understand why you think we would get married. My child's father is already deceased, Anna said. Her voice devoid of emotion. What? Anna, what are you saying? You wanted to marry me, and I'm the father of that child. Ken responded, his voice tinged with anger and desperation. Turning to Emily, he said, Emily, don't you want to live with your dad? Sir, this is our first time meeting, isn't it? You should follow proper infection control and wear your mask if you're going to talk to me. Emily replied, emotionless as she gave him a gentle reminder. Yeah, considering the times we're in, proper infection control is crucial. I couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. It was clear now Ken was one of those men who believed that a woman he had broken up with would always still love him. What a delusional guy. Ken looked like a pigeon that had been struck by a pea shooter as he hurriedly pulled his mask up to cover his nose. This conversation isn't going anywhere. Let's forget this ever happened. Clearly, you don't understand that a small e-commerce site like yours can be crushed at any time, Ken said, attempting to make a last-ditch threat. But before he could finish, a deep voice cut through the room as the door to the meeting room opened. I wasn't aware you had that kind of power, said the voice. Standing in the doorway was Ken's father and my former boss, Mr. Johnson, the CEO. Father, why are you here? Ken stammered. Buying out a business behind my back? Did you have enough funds left in your company for that? Mr. Johnson asked, his tone stern. If we bring in a new venture, we can turn things around. That's why I'm here talking to Ben. Silence. How many times have I told you that your company is beyond saving? Mr. Johnson roared. It turned out that Ken's company had been on the verge of bankruptcy due to the economic downturn over the past year. In a desperate attempt to salvage it, he had set his sights on acquiring my company. It was an unbelievably childish and unrealistic plan. I couldn't help but feel sorry for Mr. Johnson, having someone like this as his heir. Do you really think I don't know anything? I've heard all about how you treated Anna and her daughter, Mr. Johnson said, his voice stern. But that's why I'm trying to make them my family now. Ken stammered. Don't be ridiculous. How rotten can you be? You're a disgrace. A tremendous roar echoed through the room. The sheer intensity of it made Emily cling tightly to my arm. Emily, right? I'm sorry I scared you. Noticing her fear, Mr. Johnson gently apologized to Emily. I was the one who called Mr. Johnson here today. I had done some digging and found out that Ken's company had been teetering on the brink of bankruptcy over the past year. I also heard from former colleagues that his engagement had been called off, though I wasn't sure if the two were connected. Anticipating what today's meeting would be about, I met with Mr. Johnson beforehand and told him everything. It turned out that Mr. Johnson was unaware of the situation with Anna and Emily. He had been initially skeptical of his son's actions. But after seeing a picture of Emily, he seemed to understand. She does bear a resemblance to him when he was a child. I can't believe Ken would do something like this. His voice seemed to tremble slightly. That's why he had agreed to come today. I deeply apologize. An apology won't fix this, and as for you, Ben, last year's dismissal was wrongful. I should have been more involved in personnel matters. I must offer you compensation, Mr. Johnson said. No, that won't be necessary. Instead, I ask that you promise not to have any further involvement with us. I also ask that you refrain from any further dealings with our company. That's all I need, Anna added. Understood. I'll make sure it's all documented properly, Mr. Johnson agreed. During this entire exchange, Ken remained silent, staring down at the floor, not uttering a single word. As we were about to leave, Mr. Johnson looked at Emily with a gentle gaze. If Ken hadn't made such terrible choices, Mr. Johnson might have been a doting grandfather, I thought. Emily would never meet her father or grandparents again. I couldn't help but wonder if this was truly the right decision. As we walked home, Emily holding my hand, I asked her quietly, Emily, aren't you lonely? As soon as I asked, I realized I might have overstepped, so I glanced at Anna, who was walking on Emily's other side. She simply smiled softly and nodded, reassuring me. No, I'm not lonely. I have Mom and you, Ben. And also your mom, Emily replied, her voice filled with contentment. Hearing her say that so naturally, including me in her list of important people, made me incredibly happy. And the fact that she even included my mom, whom she'd only met through video calls, warmed my heart even more. I see. Well, I'm exhausted, so tired. I said, trying to hide the tears that were welling up by pretending to yawn and wiping my eyes. A few years passed, and our company's growth continued with successful business expansions, leading to stable and prosperous operations. Emily is now about to enter 4th grade, turning 10 this winter. Since starting school, she had made friends her age and seemed to be doing well. Just when I thought everything was going well, Emily dropped a bombshell, I'm going to America. It was December 24th. The world was gradually returning to normal, with mask wearing becoming less common. We were having a small Christmas party in my apartment. As we finished our cake, Emily made her sudden announcement. Why? I asked, taken aback. I've been thinking about it for a while. I want to study in America when I turn 10, she explained. It turned out that Emily's school life, which I had assumed was going smoothly, had actually been quite challenging for her. The rigid structure of Japanese schools, with their emphasis on conformity and synchronized learning speeds, had become a source of both boredom and stress for her. Being exceptionally sensitive to others' emotions, Emily was constantly aware of how her individuality set her apart from her peers and teachers. And she worried excessively about how she was perceived. The doctor at the mental health clinic told me about schools in America that specialize in educating kids like me. I've been researching it and thinking about it ever since, Emily said. Indeed, I had also read that the US is at the forefront of gifted education. A learning environment tailored to each student's unique talents might be exactly what Emily needs to fully realize her potential. So next year, I'm going to America. As Emily smiled after saying this, I realized, almost unconsciously, that tears were streaming down my face. Huh? Ben, why are you crying? Emily asked, looking surprised. It was only then that I noticed I was crying, but once the tears started, they wouldn't stop. If you leave, I'll be lonely. I didn't care if it seemed pathetic. What father wouldn't feel sad about his daughter leaving the nest? Wait. I'm not her father, though, I thought to myself, correcting my own thoughts. Anna, noticing my tears, handed me a handkerchief and gently wiped my face. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. Emily wanted to think it through and tell you herself, Anna said softly. Are you going with her? I asked. No, I'm staying in Japan, Anna replied. Watching our exchange, Emily spoke up. Ben, I think of you as my dad. So, I'd be happy if you and Mom stayed together. Her words took me by surprise, and my tears suddenly stopped. Wait, me and Anna? I stammered. Ben, you like Mom, right? And Mom likes you, too. Emily continued, ignoring my flustered response and pressing for confirmation from both of us. The two of us, now both blushing, fell silent. I've noticed how you two have kept your relationship the same, probably because of me. It was pretty obvious that you like each other. So, this is my Christmas present to you both. Mom, you're not coming home tonight. Don't worry, I'll lock up properly. Emily declared, taking charge like an adult, leaving us both speechless. Anna's face turned even redder as she opened and closed her mouth, trying to find the words. And when I come back from America, I'd love to have a little brother or sister. Right, Dad? Mom? Emily added with a big smile as she grabbed the house keys and headed out of the room, cheerfully saying, good night. Oh, and I'll take my Christmas present tomorrow morning, okay? She added before leaving. She's a sharp one. I thought. She doesn't need to inherit my sneaky tendencies. As the door closed behind her, Anna and I finally looked at each other. Both feeling a bit awkward. Can I properly confess now? I asked, realizing my daughter had beaten me to the punch. Anna giggled, her cheeks still flushed, and replied. I'd be delighted. With a soft smile and a blush still on her cheeks, Anna looked at me, and once again, I found myself mesmerized, thinking. She really does look like the Virgin Mary. That winter, when I met the beautiful mother and daughter in that rundown apartment, they turned out to be the greatest Christmas gift of my life. Is there a doctor on board? A flight attendant hurriedly made her way down the aisle, calling out to the economy class passengers. Suddenly, there was a commotion on the plane I was on, as people wondered what had happened. A passenger is having a medical emergency, is there a doctor on board? The flight attendant's anxious expression conveyed the seriousness of the situation. But no one raised their hand. So, I'm here, I said, raising my hand alone. I was on my way back to my hometown after quitting my job as a doctor, due to a certain incident. Thank goodness. A passenger suddenly lost consciousness. What I saw when I was taken to the scene was a passenger lying in the aisle, completely motionless. Please, help us. The family of the passenger pleaded tearfully. Seeing this, I said, of course. I will help. Despite having quit, I returned to my role as a doctor and nodded firmly. Thank you for your help earlier. Thanks to the quick first aid, the passenger regained consciousness safely. As soon as the plane landed at the airport, the flight attendant who had shouted, "Is there a doctor on board?" earlier, came running after me. She straightened her back and gave me a very polite bow. Oh, It was nothing. I was just doing what anyone in my position would have done. It had been a long time since anyone had expressed such heartfelt gratitude. I felt both embarrassed and deeply touched. I, Alex Martin, scratched my head and looked down at the airport floor. Then, it happened. That habit of scratching your head hasn't changed, has it, Alex? Ha! Startled by the sudden mention of my name, I looked up. The flight attendant, with her glamorous makeup, was smiling brightly. You're Alex, right? From B High School? What, how do you know that? I was taken aback by how she knew even my high school, and I stared at her. Then, don't stare at me like that. It's so dark in the airplane that I ended up putting on too much makeup. She mumbled shyly, her cheeks slightly red. I recognized that habit of hers. Could it be Anna? Correct. The flight attendant now wore a slightly more youthful, innocent smile. Amazingly, she was my childhood friend, Anna. Anna, is it really you? Yes. Did you not recognize me because of the heavy makeup? No, you look so beautiful now, I didn't recognize you. Oh, come on. It's embarrassing when you say such things so seriously. It wasn't just flattery, and Anna truly had become beautiful. That's because we grew up in a small rural town. Back then, Anna was notably plain and unpolished, and she was so self-conscious about it that she always walked with her head down. But now, she had become a sophisticated city woman. Anna, a flight attendant. Surprised? That a country bumpkin like me is doing such a glamorous job? No. It's okay. I'm used to that reaction by now. Walking side by side with Anna, who chuckled softly, we began walking down the hallway. Her confident, upright posture as she walked made her seem like a different person. And indeed, she was truly beautiful. I was captivated by her dignified profile, almost forgetting she was my childhood friend. However, the next moment, I suddenly came back to my senses. Alex, you became a doctor. Wow, you really achieved your dream. Oh. Alex? I had suddenly stopped walking, and Anna stopped as well, tilting her head in curiosity. No, it's not like that. What? I got fired. So? I'm not a doctor anymore. What do you mean? I fell silent. I stared at the floor, lost in thought. I remembered the empty days I had been living for so long. And the fact that I had lost a life because of my mistake. After graduating from a university in New York, I started working at the affiliated General Hospital. It was a so-called huge hospital with over 1,000 beds. The number of patients relying on us was enormous, and the number of doctors working there was also significant. Among them, I couldn't say I was exceptionally talented. I was never entrusted with surgeries, and I just went through the motions of daily outpatient care and night duties. My colleagues whispered behind my back, "He's not going to get anywhere." That changed when I was 29. It was triggered by a word from one of my superiors. Alex, would you like to take on this surgery? What? What did you just say, Professor Owens? The superior was Dr. Owens, who served as the professor and head of surgery. Despite having joined the hospital from an outside institution, he had risen to the position of professor due to his impressive record of successfully performing numerous difficult surgeries. He was an ideal boss who even took notice of someone as unremarkable as me. Amazingly, he proposed to me, "Would you like to be the lead surgeon for a certain operation?" No, I can't do it. Why not? You're diligent and handle your daily work seriously. I trust and want to entrust this to someone like you. But I still lack experience. Even without experience, you've put in the effort to match it. Haven't you? Professor Owens. He had been watching me. He had seen how I practiced surgeries on my own between daily duties. Take the challenge. Don't worry, I'll be right there to support you. All right. Later, I attempted my first surgery. The result was a great success. This boosted my confidence as a doctor, and I started to request surgeries myself by saying, "Please let me handle the operation." Even amidst my increasingly busy days, I continued to study and practice further. I eventually succeeded in a series of high-difficulty surgeries. By the age of 30, I had become known as the young genius surgeon. However, it was once again a word from Professor Owens that changed my fate. Alex, from now on, I want you to work as my assistant for a while. What? Professor Owens, with the same smile as when he entrusted me with my first surgery, patted me on the shoulder. Having already established my position as a surgeon, I couldn't believe what he was saying. Why should I be an assistant now? And seeing through my thoughts, he adopted a slightly stern expression. I don't want to say it, but have you been getting a bit overconfident lately? What? Being called a genius and excellent doctor at such a young age, I feel like you've become a bit arrogant. Do you realize that? Don't worry. You're still young, and you can restart as many times as you need. Professor Owens. Professor Owens gently patted me on the shoulder as I looked down in embarrassment. Go back to basics and start learning surgery from scratch again, under me. Yes. I was deeply grateful to Professor Owens. By giving me some tough love, he made me realize how overconfident I had become. Not only did he not abandon me, but he also showed me the proper way to be a doctor. Or so I thought, but that was a mistake. In my first surgery as an assistant, I realized the truth. Professor Owens's real intention. From here on, you'll take over as the lead surgeon. What? In front of me was a patient whose abdomen had just been opened. Yet Professor Owens was removing his gloves and heading for the exit. Professor Owens. I called out in a panic, and he turned his face toward me. I could see his smile even through the mask. You can handle the rest, he said. Despite the high difficulty of the surgery, it somehow ended successfully. When Professor Owens heard the news, he nodded with satisfaction. I knew you'd be fine, Alex. I trusted you. After that, every time a surgery started, he would always leave the operating room right after it began, saying, "You handle the rest." And then, I think you understand by now. Even in this surgery, I was the one who performed it to the end. Isn't that right? Yes. This was an unspoken rule in our workplace. Even if the assistant successfully completed the surgery, the credit belonged to Professor Owens. For more than 10 years, he had been making talented doctors his assistants and having them carry out surgeries on his behalf. No one dared to risk accusing such a well-trusted surgical professor as Professor Owens, not even Miller, the hospital director. And I was no different. The next surgery is expected to be difficult as well. I'm expecting good results from you. Yes. Professor Owens flashed an ugly smile, revealing his true nature. If I had prioritized justice over self-preservation at that time, that patient might not have lost a life. 3 years passed, during which I continued to perform surgeries at Professor Owens's command. Then one day, the hospital was struck by an emergency. A new patient is coming in immediately. The treatment room is full, line them up in the hallway. Get more blood transfusion packs, quickly. The tense voices of doctors and nurses echoed throughout the surgical floor as a large number of people rushed around. The treatment rooms and hallways were overflowing with severely injured patients covered in blood. The groans and cries of "help me and it hurts" created an atmosphere that was like a scene from hell. It was an unprecedented multi-vehicle accident involving more than 10 cars and trucks. The injured were all transported at once to our nearby hospital. Handle the minor injuries over there with first aid, send the severe cases to me. Yes, sir. As a mid-level surgeon, I gave instructions to the junior doctors and prioritized the treatment of the seriously injured. However, the stream of patients was never ending. Staff from other departments rushed to help, and the entire hospital worked together to save lives. But Professor Owens was nowhere to be seen. Where did he go? What are you doing, Alex? As I looked around at the chaos, our voices overlapped. Professor Owens. Where have you been at a time like this? And what about you? What are you doing at such a crucial time? What? Our conversation was completely out of sync. When I frowned in confusion, Professor Owens calmly spoke as if he couldn't see the devastation in front of him. You have a surgery scheduled now, don't you? Hurry up and get to it. What are you talking about? I shouted at Professor Owens, my voice echoing down the hallway. However, Professor Owens remained unfazed, even as I grabbed him by the collar. He tightly grasped my wrist. "I told you today's surgery is important. After all, it's Mr. Carter from S Industries." In other words, he was telling me to prioritize a VIP patient whose life was not in immediate danger over the severely injured people right in front of us. If the surgery succeeded, we would receive a large donation. This would secure his position as the next hospital director. Now, come on. The patient is waiting. By now, Professor Owens was grinning with a hideous smile. Professor Owens pulled me, trying to drag me to the operating room. Suppressing my nausea, I shook off his hand. "I'm not going. I have an emergency surgery to perform." "What did you say?" "You're the lead surgeon, Professor Owens. You can perform the surgery yourself." Ignoring the stunned Professor Owens, I took the patient to the operating room. Even during the emergency surgery, Professor Owens kept urging me to come quickly. But I ignored them all, focusing solely on the patient in front of me. Eventually, the surgery was completed successfully, and the patient's life was saved. As I breathed a sigh of relief, I realized that Professor Owens had stopped sending messages over an hour ago. "Professor Owens, I'm sorry for being late. The surgery. I was supposed to assist with the surgery as well." Out of a sense of duty, I rushed to the operating room where Professor Owens was. "And then?" "Really, Alex? You took your time," Professor Owens muttered without even looking at me. The operating room was filled with a heavy atmosphere. The reason was, no way. The surgery was supposed to have a high success rate. But the patient lying in the center of the room had already gone into cardiac arrest. According to the nurses present, it was entirely Professor Owens's mistake. He had made an incision in the wrong place, causing the patient to suffer massive bleeding. Yes, many people had witnessed Professor Owens's error. However, by the time the situation was explained to the bereaved family, it was said that I had been the one in charge of the surgery and that my mistake had cost the patient's life. "I will never forgive you." The tearful face of the bereaved family shouting is still etched in my memory. In the end, the hospital settled with the family, and I wasn't held responsible for the mistake. But, Alex, if only you had listened to me, there wouldn't have been any problems. In that sense, it was indeed your mistake. Professor Owens sneered, handing me a dismissal notice. After pinning the blame on me and isolating me, by turning the entire surgery department against me, he finally forced me out of the hospital. I had done what I believed to be a doctor's duty by saving patients who seek help. Yet, it resulted in the death of another patient. What should I have done? What is my job as a doctor supposed to be? In my desperation, I found myself on a plane headed to my hometown. I wanted to return to my family home, which I hadn't visited in over 10 years. I wanted to see my family, whom I hadn't seen in so long, right away. Driven by that determination. "Alex?" Anna peered at my face with concern as I fell silent. Her voice brought me back to reality. "Oh, sorry, I was just lost in thought. Are you okay? You look really pale." "Yeah, it's just a lot of things going on." I simply explained to Anna, "I quit my job, and I'm heading back to my family home." "So you're going home, does that mean you'll be taking over the family business?" "Probably." "Wow. I try to go back as often as I can between flights, so if that's the case, it means I'll get to see you all the time." "What? Does that mean she wants to see me?" Anna, who had grown so beautiful, beamed and spoke excitedly, making my heart skip a beat. She continued, still looking at me intently, unaware of my reaction. "It's really been years since I've seen you, Alex. I'm off tomorrow. Would you like to get together with everyone who stayed in our hometown?" No, I think I'll pass. I'm not really in the mood for that." "I see. Everyone has times like that." "Sorry, I got carried away," she apologized. "No. You're just like you used to be," I thought suddenly, feeling nostalgic. When I was down, she wouldn't dig into the details and would always try to encourage me with positive words. She really is still Anna. "Hey. Talk a lot with your dad, okay?" "Huh? He seemed lonely on his own. I'm sure he's been waiting for you to come home, wanting to see you. Promise me, she said with a smile. Anna waved goodbye with a small wave and walked away, pulling her suitcase. As I watched her confident figure walk away, I thought to myself, Dad wants to see me. This filled me with a strange, ticklish feeling of disbelief. It was complicated, but not unpleasant. Because my father and I had parted ways after a fight 16 years ago. My family, the Martin family, has been a farming family for generations. From spring to summer, we grew potatoes, and from autumn to winter, we grew radishes. The person who mainly managed the large fields was my father, Miles. My mother used to farm with him, but when I was in middle school, she suddenly passed away from an illness. So during my school years, I went to school on weekdays and helped my father on the weekends. That was until I said, I want to apply to medical school, during my freshman year of high school. Wow, did Dad do this? I was impressed, although it was only natural for him to do this. It was just after the summer harvest, and he was preparing to plant the next crops. As far as I could see, the field stretched out beautifully and neatly. Did he finish this all by himself? That's amazing. Being away made me realize how incredible my father was. Now that I've worked, I understand the difficulty of sticking with the same job. When I see my father, that's the first thing I want to tell him. Dad, where could he be? Maybe over there? Just as I set foot into the farm. Stay out. A sharp, thorny shout came from behind. Startled, I turned around, and standing there was Dad. What are you doing back here now? Get out. His work clothes were dirty with dust. A towel hung around his neck, and he wore a worn-out cap. He looked exactly the same as he did back then. But my father was even angrier at me than when we parted ways after that fight 16 years ago. Dad, look, I quit my job. So what? Did you come here to beg for money? What? That comment really got to me. Hadn't he been waiting for me to come home because he wanted to see me? I was glad, but his attitude was a shock and made me even angrier. Hey, are you still mad about what happened back then? You're in the way. I don't have money for you, so go back to New York. You can't talk to your son like that. I crouched down next to him, pulling weeds alongside my father. If I'm in the way, maybe he'll listen to me after this work is done. I was half hopeful and half worried for my father, who seemed to have grown smaller. But my father's response was to shove his dirt-covered hands at me. What? I was pushed forcefully and tumbled backward onto the ground. When I protested, saying, I was trying to help you, why did you do that? And he coldly responded, no thanks. Why not? It's a lot of work for you to do alone. Then why did you become a doctor? What? You abandoned your parents and hometown to go to New York on your own. Now you're back because you hate being a doctor? You're pathetic. Someone like you has no right to touch the fields our family has protected for generations. Just leave. Dad. No matter what I said after that, he completely ignored me. So I reluctantly went inside the house and knelt in front of my mother's altar, saying, I'm sorry I didn't come back sooner. As I waited for my father to finish his work and come home. When I first said, I want to become a doctor, my father vehemently opposed the idea. What will happen to the farm if you leave? Do you want to destroy the family business that's lasted for generations? There's no way you could become a doctor. I remember saying terrible things to my father in return, words spoken out of anger. I actually thought being a farmer was an uncool job, and I hated it. If it collapses, so be it. Dad was only a farmer because he wasn't smart enough for anything else, and so on. It escalated into a huge fight, almost to the point of blows, and I stopped helping him entirely. It was partly because I stubbornly threw myself into studying, determined that I'll definitely get into medical school. And it was because my father also went ahead and threw away all my work clothes and boots. That was the final straw, and we stopped talking altogether. Even when I got into medical school, I simply left the acceptance letter on the table in silence. I never found out whether my father ever saw it. Yikes. What time is it? The sound woke me up, and I found the house completely dark. It seemed I had fallen asleep in front of the altar while waiting for my father. I haven't been sleeping much lately. Perhaps feeling safe at home, I felt like I had slept deeply for the first time in a while. As I stood up and stretched, light leaked through a gap in the sliding door. On the other side of the altar room was the living room, where my father always had his evening drink. "Dad, what's that?" When I opened the sliding door, my father was there, but he wasn't drinking alcohol. It was a glass of water. And some medication that looked like it was prescribed by a hospital. "What medicine is that? Are you feeling unwell?" He didn't say anything. Ignoring my question, my father downed the medication with the water in one gulp. Then he crumpled the empty packaging in his hand and stood up. "It's none of your business." "How can you say that? I am your son, after all." "My son?" His voice was as cold as it had been during the day, rejecting me. As if to say, "Where is this son of mine? I don't want you to worry about me. You did whatever you wanted, leaving for New York and then coming back whenever you pleased. I don't remember having such a selfish and shameless person as my son. Why are you like this? Look, I'm sorry for what happened in the past. I don't need your apology. I don't even want to talk to you." "Dad." The more I tried to say, the more stubborn my father became. I was so happy to see him again. But it was clear he wasn't, and he seemed to be saying, "I never wanted to see you again." The vast difference between our feelings was unbearably sad. I'm not going to ask what happened. But in the end, being a doctor was too much for you. That's why you slunk back here. What? Frustration rose within me at his ignorance of what had happened to me. Sorrow filled me at his unwillingness to even ask. Rejected by my father, whom I hadn't seen in 16 years, I was overwhelmed by a mixture of emotions and just stood there, paralyzed. As he walked past me in silence, I heard the sliding door shut with a loud snap behind me, and I collapsed, all the strength leaving my body. If I knew it would be like this, I shouldn't have come back. At this moment, I hadn't yet noticed the message on my phone. It said, "Can we meet tomorrow? Alex, are you okay?" The next day, Anna arrived right on time at the meeting place, a nearby park, with a worried expression on her face. "Your complexion is terrible, even worse than yesterday." "Heh, a lot happened yesterday." I tried to brush it off with a forced smile. But suddenly, Anna's figure blurred before my eyes. I felt something wet on my cheek and touched it. "Huh?" I was crying. Tears started pouring out uncontrollably. "Sorry, Anna. I guess today's not a good day." "Alex, hey. If you want, you can talk to me about it." "No, I'm fine now." "I've never seen you cry before, Alex. Something really bad must have happened, right?" I fell silent. To be honest, I was at my breaking point. Too many things had happened in such a short time, and being rejected by my father last night was the last straw. Part of me didn't want to see anyone, but another part wanted someone to listen, and I decided to take Anna up on her offer. Actually, as soon as Anna sat down on the bench next to me, I began my story. About the days when I was used by Professor Owens and constantly had my accomplishments stolen. How it eventually led to the worst-case scenario, with me being blamed and kicked out of the hospital. And the disastrous reunion with my father. During my long story, I was looking down the whole time, so I hadn't noticed at all. I didn't notice that Anna, sitting next to me, was quietly shedding far more tears than I was. "Anna." Surprised, I looked at her, and she forced a crumpled smile through her tear-streaked cheeks. But it quickly distorted, and more fresh tears began to flow. "Are you okay?" "I'm sorry, even though you're the one who's hurting, Alex." "No. I'm sorry, it's because I said something unnecessary." "No. My father hadn't been waiting for my return. That's why last night, I thought I shouldn't have come back, but after a night's sleep, my thinking changed. It was a shock, but I'm glad we talked. It's like I've finally let go." "So, does that mean?" "Yeah. I think I'll quit being a doctor after all. Many times before, I had moments where I thought, I just want to quit. The reason I clung to my job as a doctor was perhaps because I felt guilty for going against my father's objections to pursue it. But if my father no longer considers me his son, then maybe I don't need to care about what he thinks. Besides, I no longer have the confidence to continue working as a doctor. I don't even know anymore why I worked so hard, what it was all for. The more I tried, the more I was used by a coward. The more I was shunned by others, and in the end, I took a life. That wasn't your fault, Alex. It was me. I kept taking surgeries because I didn't want to fall out of favor with Professor Owens. That caused his skills to dull, leading to such a mistake. I will never forget the fact that a life was lost. The words in grief of the bereaved family will be something I carry with me forever, even if I start a new job. Alex. Anna seemed unsure of what to say after I shared such a heavy story. She opened and closed her mouth repeatedly, finally whispering, "You know," as if squeezing the words out. I wondered if you might get mad at me for saying this. I wasn't sure if I should bring it up. Clenching her fists on her knees, she seemed to make up her mind and spoke. There was a time when I thought about giving up on life. What? I actually transferred to the airline I'm working at now. At my previous company, there was a senior colleague I just couldn't get along with. She was always criticizing me, belittling everything from my appearance to my work. Eventually, even the colleagues who were on my side started distancing themselves from me. Reaching her mental limit, Anna left the company as if to escape. She then returned home and spent about a year living as a recluse. She hardly ate and couldn't even talk to her family. But, even so, I never grew to hate being a flight attendant. Even now, just thinking about those days with that colleague makes me tremble, but seeing the passengers' smiles was always enjoyable. And I loved being able to proudly work as a flight attendant. And now, it's so much fun. Without hesitation, Anna responded with a beaming smile. It was a bright and radiant smile, hard to believe from someone who had experienced such hardship. Of course, there are still tough times now and then, but it's so much fun that I'm working hard at this company. So you shouldn't quit being a doctor, Alex. What? I wish I could tell my past self, just quit that company and find another place to work quickly. After all, there isn't just one airline company in the world. And there are countless hospitals in the world, right? The world is vast, and there isn't just one place where you belong. As long as you have the strength, you can start over and restart your life as many times as you want. These words came from Anna, someone who once nearly lost the will to live. As long as your body and mind are healthy, you can start over as many times as you need to. Isn't that what your job is all about, Alex? I was taken aback by those words. I really think it's an amazing job. You were so cool when you helped that passenger on the plane. My job. It was a truly eye-opening moment. I suddenly felt like everything was clear. I remembered why I wanted to become a doctor in the first place, the feelings I had when I first thought, I want to be a doctor. When my mother fell suddenly ill, I was devastated. When she passed away so quickly despite all efforts to save her, I was even more devastated. I never wanted to feel that way again. And I didn't want anyone else to go through it, either. That's why I took the entrance exam for medical school in New York, despite my father's fierce opposition. Even after becoming a doctor, I continued to study and practice surgery without fail. But it wasn't for the patients. The frustration of being the only one among my peers who wasn't trusted to perform surgeries. That frustration gradually changed my motivation. I became more focused on having my skills recognized by others than on saving patients and their families. That's why I caught Professor Owens's attention. My desire to be recognized was satisfied, but I ended up being used, yet still. Maybe I'll try again. This time, for someone else. But could I really do it? As I wavered in my confidence, Anna gave me a reassuring smile. "You're definitely going to be fine, Alex," she said. And she shared her strength with me by gripping my hand firmly. Perhaps even the gods saw my determination. The next day, a significant trial awaited me. It happened when I felt uncomfortable staying at home, and went into town by bus in the morning to pass the time. By chance, as I passed by the only general hospital in town, I glanced over at the parking lot and was startled. "What? Are you okay?" I hurried over to find a man clutching his chest and leaning against a small truck. I arrived just in time. The man collapsed onto the ground as if his strings had been cut. Hold on. Is your chest hurting? Let me see. I carefully lifted the man's body to lay him on his back. At that moment, I felt the blood drain from my face. Dad! The man who had collapsed before me was my father, who had ignored me that morning and gone to the fields alone. Can you hear me? It's me, Dad. Oof. Perhaps not realizing it was me, my father didn't respond to my call and just groaned in pain, clutching his chest. His labored breathing, the cold sweat beading on his forehead, and the chest pain were all signs of a serious problem. And most of all, the prescription that had fallen beside him, all of these confirmed my diagnosis. Dad, where's your medicine? You carry it with you in case of an attack. As I called out to him, I hurriedly searched his bag, wallet, and anywhere else that seemed likely. Finally, I found a pill case in his pants pocket and forced the medication into his mouth. Is everything all right? Just as his pained expression eased a bit, a nurse spotted us and came running over. I asked her to treat him immediately and followed as my father was wheeled into the hospital on a stretcher. There, I learned that my diagnosis had been correct. Thanks to your precise first aid, his condition is stable now. Are you a medical professional? The doctor who treated my father was an elderly man with white hair, who introduced himself as the attending physician. He was shorter than me, but had an unmistakable air of authority. I noticed his nameplate read Clark, with the title director below it. Instead of answering his question, I asked my own. Dr. Clark, does my father have angina? Father. So you must be, he said. I'm his son, Alex. I may be inexperienced, but I'm a doctor. Dr. Clark nodded, murmuring, I see. As if it all made sense to him. He then told me what he knew. My father had been suffering from angina for more than 10 years. This isn't the first time my father's had an attack, is it? There have been several occasions before. Fortunately, until now, the attacks have been mild. And he's been able to take the medicine himself, nitroglycerin, or neighbors who found him called an ambulance. But this was the first time he'd experienced such a severe attack. And just a moment ago, tests revealed that his condition had progressed more than expected, and before his heart deteriorates further, immediate intervention is necessary. Regretting the late discovery, Dr. Clark informed me with a stern expression. Intervention, you mean surgery? Yes. Considering his age, it would be best to proceed right away. But it's already too late for a catheter. Angina is a condition where the heart's movement deteriorates due to the blockage of the coronary arteries, essential vessels that supply blood to the heart muscle. There are two main types of surgery for angina. One is catheter surgery, which involves inserting a thin tube into the coronary artery to improve blood flow in the blocked area. However, if the condition has progressed, the catheter may no longer be effective. In such cases, a coronary artery bypass surgery is performed, which creates a new pathway for blood by connecting a new vessel from the aorta past the blocked section. My father needs bypass surgery. Then please, do it immediately. As I clung to his white coat, Dr. Clark told me the harsh reality. There was no precedent for bypass surgery at this hospital. And they had no cardiac surgeons on staff who had experience with the procedure. Alex, as a doctor, you know how much skill and speed are required for bypass surgery. Ah. Dr. Clark's words brought back some of my composure. Other doctors nearby also knew how difficult bypass surgery was, so they awkwardly avoided my gaze. So, I raised my hand high, ensuring everyone in the room could see it. I'll do it. Alex, you. My specialty is cardiac surgery. Dr. Clark, please let me perform my father's surgery. Confusion and murmurs spread among those present. Of course, it was only natural when a patient's family member suddenly asked to perform surgery. No one here knew that I had once made a name for myself as a cardiac surgeon. I have experience with bypass surgery as well. Please. Even so. Our facilities. As I bowed my head, the air of confusion grew even more palpable. I bit my lip, thinking it was hopeless, and then, I will take responsibility. A solemn voice echoed through the room, causing everyone to look up in surprise. The voice belonged to Dr. Clark, who continued speaking as he looked around at his fellow doctors. "I will ensure the necessary facilities. Can you trust me on this?" "But, Dr. Clark." "Alex. As the director of this hospital, I can entrust you with the surgery. Especially to you, who was once called a genius surgeon." "What? How did he know?" Dr. Clark looked at me straight in the eye. His face showed no hesitation, and he genuinely believed in me. And he conveyed strongly, "I was the only one who could save my father. I will definitely save my father, so please help me." "Of course. I'll do everything I can." Dr. Clark nodded firmly. He then completed the preparations for surgery in no time and patted me on the shoulder as the day of my father's operation arrived. Seeing my nervousness, "It will be all right. You'll succeed, Alex." "Yes." Dr. Clark's strong encouragement. The determination that I would absolutely save my father. And the faith in myself that had carried me through countless surgeries. With those things in my heart, I stepped into the operating room. And the surgery, which lasted over 5 hours, ended in a great success, with Dr. Clark giving his full seal of approval. "Impressive, Alex." Just as I'd heard. After the surgery, while watching over my sleeping father, I was taking a break. Dr. Clark came into the hospital room and said that with a gentle smile. "You knew about me? I've known your father, Miles, for a long time. I used to pester him about not drinking too much. But it didn't seem to get through to this stubborn man." Dr. Clark had heard from my father that I had become a doctor. I prepared myself, thinking he must have complained about me, saying things like, "He abandoned his parents to go to New York," or, "He's ungrateful, but he was worried about you." "What?" "Well, at first, at least. But when you started making a name for yourself, he'd bring clippings from medical journals and newspapers and..." Reminiscing about those days, Dr. Clark looked at my father's face. Then he shared an unexpected fact with me. Many times he showed them to me, beaming with pride, saying, "My son's in this, have a look." He said, "Having accomplished such wonderful work. Alex is my pride and joy." What? I couldn't believe my ears. I couldn't believe my father would say such things. He had been angry with me for leaving him behind and going to New York for the past 16 years. He wanted you to take over the family business, and there's no doubt about that. Even after you went to New York, he lamented, "I won't be able to face our ancestors if it ends with me." That's why he couldn't openly support you. But he was the one who was the happiest for your success and cheered for you more than anyone. Can't you understand that? Dad. Then why did he say such harsh things to me 2 days ago? I wanted to wake him up and demand answers right away. Yet, seeing him sleep was a rare sight, so I just sat by his side and watched over him until he woke up. You. Why haven't you gone back to New York yet? He should still be groggy from the anesthesia. As soon as he woke up, my father glared sharply at me. Well, I performed your surgery, so I can't leave until I make sure there are no complications. Busybody. When I informed him that I would be performing the surgery, he declared, "I won't have the surgery." He claimed he'd rather let his heart stop than be taken care of by such an ungrateful son. It was Dr. Clark who convinced him otherwise, saying, "You can't fight with your son if you're in the afterlife." I did my best on the surgery, so we could have another father-son fight. I have nothing left to say to you. Yes, you do have something to say. I don't. Yes, you must. Like, who will take care of the fields while you're in the hospital? At that moment, my father's eyes opened wide. If I hadn't quickly held him down, he would have tried to jump out of bed, even though he needed complete rest. If you have time to mess around with the fields, go see as many patients as you can. There it is, your real feelings. You should have said that from the beginning. What? I calmed my flushed, enraged father and laid him back down in bed. Then I revealed what I had been thinking about. I had been considering this the entire time my father was asleep. Was it for me? Is that why you said those things? No. You wanted to send me back to New York. So that I wouldn't quit being a doctor and take up farming instead? No. Don't worry. I'm going to keep being a doctor, because I still want to be your pride and joy. What? My father was at a loss for words, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Just then, Dr. Clark drew back the curtain on his rounds, noticing my father's expression. And he gave a wry, crumpled smile. It's about time you were honest, Miles. Your son is smart, and he knows everything. He fell silent. Dr. Clark, whom my father once adored like an older brother, still had the power to silence him. Accepting defeat, my father dropped his shoulders and stared at his hands. I wasn't very smart. I couldn't see myself doing anything but following in my father's footsteps. I never dreamed my son would say he wanted to be a doctor. And he actually became one. It must have been tough. I'm impressed. Yeah. It was tough. Of course, I couldn't rely on my father, so I managed to graduate college with scholarships and part-time jobs. And after graduation, it was one hardship after another. Yet, those 16 years of struggles were all rewarded by my father's words. I'm proud. You are my, so don't quit. Yeah. You don't need to take over the fields. Go back to New York and see your work through to the end. And then, come back and show your face from time to time. Yeah. Just when I thought he was finally being honest, he wasn't. That last remark was his way of saying, come back and visit occasionally. I understand that now. Speaking of which, Alex, have you considered staying here? What? Dr. Clark's words made me widen my eyes. You're planning to look for work in New York, right? Then, if you're willing, I'd like you to work at this hospital. I've seen your skills firsthand. Dr. Clark. Instinctively, I turned to my father. He had his eyes closed, pretending to sleep, but he eventually nodded, as if to say, do it. And so, thank you. I'd be honored. Likewise. I took Dr. Clark's outstretched hand and shook it firmly. And that's how I ended up staying in my hometown, working as a surgeon under Dr. Clark. 1 month later. My father is still in the hospital but is steadily recovering. While taking over as my father's attending physician from Dr. Clark, I also kept up with my daily work. In this town with its aging population, there are many people with heart concerns. The reputation that a renowned heart specialist had come from New York spread quickly. And patients were coming to the hospital from both inside and outside the town. As the head of the newly established heart clinic, I was working tirelessly every day to alleviate as many patients' fears as possible. And then, amidst all this, when that person appeared before me again, calling me out to a backwater place like this. I'm a busy man. What on earth is Dr. Clark thinking? The man plopped down on a bench in the hallway, complaining irritably. Hey, isn't Dr. Clark here yet? Hurry up and get him. Dr. Clark is very busy. He should be here shortly. You've got quite the attitude. Have you already forgotten your debt to me, Alex? There are patients here. Please keep your voice down, Professor Owens. Yes, the person was none other than Professor Owens. He was the one who blamed me for medical malpractice and eventually got me kicked out of the hospital. Dr. Clark was my mentor back in medical school. If he says he has something to ask, I can't not come, but this is indeed a rundown hospital. The staff here seem to be of poor skill. I didn't say anything. But I didn't expect you to still be working as a doctor. I thought you would have quit after that incident. With Professor Owens's loud voice, the doctors and nurses nearby turned their attention to us. Just as if he had been waiting for this, Professor Owens grinned and raised his voice even more. I can't believe someone accused of medical malpractice is still working as a doctor. Do these people and the patients know about this, Alex? Professor Owens. What about it? If you haven't told them yet, should I? Don't hold back. We're friends, aren't we? I realized Professor Owens intends to get revenge. Because of me, he had missed his chance to become director, and now he was planning to ruin my place here as well. However, I was no longer the same person Professor Owens knew. He wasn't the only one who recognized my abilities. And I now understood that there were things far more important than having my skills acknowledged. I did not commit medical malpractice. What? The malpractice was yours, Professor Owens. You pinned it on me. I intend to reveal the truth from now on. What are you saying? Don't spread such nonsense lies. It's not a lie. Whether it is or not, those who know my skills, my patients and my colleagues here should be aware. As I said this and turned around, I made eye contact with many doctors and nurses. Whether it was because they had heard the commotion, the number of people surrounding us had doubled since earlier. And all of these colleagues, one by one, nodded with a smile. They were all saying they believed in me. I will keep starting over as many times as it takes. I will never give up being a doctor. Are you prepared to keep fighting someone like me? Professor Owens. How dare you, you insolent. Well said, Alex. Dr. Clark. Professor Owens looked shocked as Dr. Clark, who had come up behind him, grabbed him by the shoulder. Then Dr. Clark stepped in front of Professor Owens and suddenly punched him in the face. Ah! Does it hurt? But compared to the patient's pain and the grief of their families, this is nothing. You fool! Dr. Clark. I've heard everything from Alex. It wasn't a medical error that cost that patient their life. It was your arrogance. Thinking only of advancement and neglecting to hone your skills. And it's also my responsibility for recommending someone like you to that hospital. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dr. Clark. Do you even know who you should apologize to? You're hopeless. With a look of complete disappointment on his face, Dr. Clark turned his back on Professor Owens. And he muttered, I'll have to tell Director Miller everything. Upon hearing this, Professor Owens turned pale and collapsed on the spot. After that, Professor Owens's years of wrongdoing were exposed by Dr. Clark, and everything he had built came crashing down. He was immediately dismissed from the hospital, and with his bad reputation spreading, he was effectively exiled from the medical community. And now that the truth about the medical malpractice had been revealed, the bereaved family has filed a lawsuit against him. The verdict is still pending, but he will likely have to pay for his crimes. With no allies left, all alone. Eventually, when my father's discharge was finally in sight, Anna found some time amidst her busy schedule to come visit him. It's been a while. Oh, Anna. Sorry to call you here when you're busy. Are you taking care of yourself? Eating well? Yes, thanks to you. I happened to be there after finishing work and stood dumbfounded. Because my father was smiling from ear to ear. It was the very image of a kindly neighborhood uncle, a face he never showed his own son. When I was struggling with depression and became a recluse, your father would often bring me vegetables. We gradually started talking more. And it's thanks to him that I was able to get back on my feet. I didn't know that. Hey, Alex. Do you have some time to talk? What? Come to think of it, Anna, you dreamed of becoming a flight attendant ever since you were a little girl. You actually made it happen. You remembered? Something from so long ago. Anna smiled shyly as she sat down on a bench in the courtyard. I only told you my true dream, Alex. I was afraid everyone else would laugh at me. Really? But it's impressive. Not many people achieve their childhood dreams. You must have worked really hard. Yeah. I almost gave up so many times. But I couldn't let it go. Do you know why? Anna looked at me seriously and said, It's because of you, Alex. Me? Yeah. Even when everyone around you doubted and made fun of you for wanting to go to medical school, you worked hard. Without losing focus. You pursued your dream straight on. Seeing you like that gave me courage. It supported me through college and job hunting. When someone you care about is working hard, it makes you want to try your best too. It's strange, isn't it? Her unexpected words made my heart skip a beat. Blushing, Anna confessed, I was planning to tell you at graduation. However, I left for New York before graduation, and she had held on to her feelings for the entire 16 years. I actually had another dream. It was to meet you again as a successful flight attendant. And then. It's strange. Anna looked glamorous and beautiful in her flight attendant uniform. But she looked even more beautiful now, almost makeup-free and dressed plainly. Can I make that dream come true? Yeah. When I nodded, Anna's eyes glistened with tears as she smiled and said, "Thank you." Anna's dream was to become the girlfriend of someone she had loved for a long time. When she achieved that dream, she was more beautiful than ever before. I'll never forget the brightest smile I saw at that moment. A year later, we got married. My father was the happiest of anyone and declared, with unusual enthusiasm, "I'll definitely give a speech at the wedding." Unfortunately, that will have to wait for now. We're both busy with work. We'll definitely have the ceremony someday. Until then, stay healthy, Dad. That's right, Uncle Miles, or should I say, my father-in-law. As long as you're healthy, any dream can come true. Anna's right. And I've got a skilled doctor nearby. So as your doctor, here's some advice. You've been drinking a little too much lately. How about cutting back? All right. You can't achieve your dreams if you're not healthy. When Dad said that with a wry smile, Anna and I exchanged glances. Then we both smiled at Dad and said, "Exactly." Right after that meeting, Anna left for her next flight. I gazed up at the sky from the hospital window, imagining Anna working as a flight attendant. Doing so gave me the strength to keep trying my best as a doctor. Even if you lose sight of your dreams or goals, you can always start over as many times as you need to. As long as you can remember the feelings you had when you embraced your dream, you can always find the strength to keep going. And as long as my mind and body are healthy, helping others do the same is my job as a doctor. I want to continue to take pride in having chosen this career and in the fact that I am still doing it today.